What's up guys, this is your favorite fanfic YouTuber, the Fanfic Majesty, and welcome to another amazing video. You can follow me on Patreon for exclusive stories.
4KP. Chapter 74 The Fear of the 46th Chamber. Eliminating the Cancer in Soul Society. Central 46 is composed of 40 sages and 6 judges gathered from all over Central Soul Society. Without exception, they all come from the top nobles of Soul Society. This organization formed by these Soul Society nobles, and the collective council composed of nobles and elders is the highest judicial body of Soul Society, Central 46. Shinigami will be judged by Central 46 for any sins committed in Soul Society or in this world. If it is determined that force is needed, orders will be given to the 13th Division or other execution units through secret message tunnels using secret codes. No captain in Team 13 is allowed to raise objections to any judgment that has been made. Because all of the 46 chambers are from noble families, the approval process and methods are extremely rigid, and the judges of Central 46 always give people the impression that they are superior, have their own way, and are impersonal, so they have a very low evaluation in the hearts of all Shinigami. The more important point is that since the establishment of the Gotei 13, no captain has ever been promoted to Central 46. In other words, this is a specialized organization for Soul Society nobles, and is completely different from the Gotei 13, the Fighting Gotei organization. In this class solidified Soul Society, under the old tradition, their superior status is unbreakable due to their aristocratic status. In addition, after entering the 46th chamber, those ancient idiot nobles have the power to deal with any Shinigami at will, and even the strongest Shinigami in thousands of years cannot raise objections. This makes them feel omnipotent. Because the nobles are connected to each other, the top 4 nobles are even said to have close relations with the royal family a million years ago, which will bring them an increase in soul strength. Natural advantages. But under such a depravity, the sharp sword will also rust. Not to mention the group of guys in room 46 who have been pampered since childhood. All Shinigami in Seraiti fight every day with the awareness that they may die, but how can these nobles be willing to risk their lives to fight hollows to strengthen themselves? This also leads to a result, although their natural soul strength exceeds that of most people. But the actual combat ability is not even as good as that of a Rukongai civilian. When these pampered members of room 46 learned that Hueco Mundo's army had invaded the Seraiti, their legs were so frightened that they could only huddle together helplessly and share the unknown fear. After all, how could they, the normally aloof nobles, actually rush to the front line and encounter a real hollow? And it is precisely because they have never encountered anything in Hueco Mundo that they have a more complete grasp of this unknown fear. The pot-bellied old man sitting on the stage shouted in fear, "Can those idiots Shinigami be able to stop them? Are these Gotei 13 all trash?" That's right. There are so many Shinigami, but they can actually let the void attack inside the Seraiti. What a bunch of useless guys. There is also Yamamoto Shigekuni, who is known as the strongest Shinigami. Isn't he usually very powerful? After waiting, we will definitely convict him. Hiding under the top table is Tojo Ayaya's old friend, Tsunayashiro Toki. When he learned that Tojo Ayaya was leading Hueco Mundo to launch a battle against Soul Society, this old immortal guy was very scared. Daocheng will come to take revenge for what happened 300 years ago. Especially when he learned that Seraiti's portal had been completely breached by Hueco Mundo, this guy hid directly under the top table, feeling that he would not be able to find his own comfort with his head buried in Sword Castle. Squeak, squeak, the door of room 46 was slowly pushed open. What is this? Someone is coming in. Advertisement. Is it a monster? Have Hueco Mundo's people already attacked here? Along with the shouts of fear, the 46th room was filled with curses on the Shinigami who protected them. You losers, hurry up and block the door. If you hurt me, see how I deal with you. Although the Shinigami who protected the 46th chamber heard the scoldings of the great nobles, they did not care about the people in the 46th chamber in front of the enemy. After all, they were used to it. The guard team exchanged glances with each other, their hearts rising with vigilance, and their hands had quietly touched the hilt of the Zanpakuto. The next moment, the door opened completely. Walked in from outside, a Shinigami. He was wearing a long robe and had black hair, with fringe bangs hanging in front of his forehead. He had a strange smile on his face, but the invisible pressure he felt naturally gave him a symbol of severity. The nearest Shinigami took a closer look and confirmed that the person approaching did not have a mask, but still asked, "Are you a member of the Gotei 13? Why didn't you go fight the hollows and come here?" Quote. The duty of these Shinigami is to guard room 46. If they see someone they don't know, they will ask even if they are Shinigami across the street. What's more, the attire of the person in front of me is not a death tyrant's attire, but white clothes with red trim. This is definitely not the attire of the Gotei 13. Hearing this, the visitor smiled lightly and did not answer. Instead, he turned to look at the dignitaries in room 46 on the high platform. I haven't seen you for many years. My lords are well. However, seeing your faces here is no different from what I remember, which makes me feel a little more at ease. Seeing that the person who came in did not have a mask and looked like a Shinigami, Tsunayashiro Toki and the other members of room 46 immediately straightened their backs. What they feared was the brutal battle outside. Facing Shinigami, they regained their former aloof appearance. Tsunayashiro angrily reprimanded the visitor. Who are you? Instead of guarding the Seraiti, you came to where we are in the 46th room. What do you want? After hearing Tsunayashiro Toki's rebuke, the other senior executives of room 46 seemed to have received the order and scolded one after another. Trash. Why don't you hurry up and guard the Seraiti to protect us? If you don't retreat, we will sentence you to death. What are you doing here where we nobles and sages are? Do you want to live an ignoble life? Scolding a Shinigami allowed them to regain their previous confidence. Even Seraiti's nervousness and this scolding made them forget. When the visitor listened to the scolding and threats from room 46, he was not angry and smiled calmly. It seems that after 300 years of not seeing each other, you have forgotten my appearance. But it doesn't matter. I don't dare to forget you's appearance. At this time, Tsunayashiro Toki suddenly felt a shock all over his body. Listening to this voice, he suddenly remembered a past event 300 years ago. Could it be? Tsunayashiro didn't dare to think about it anymore, for fear that this nightmare would come to him again, this hatred from 300 years ago. Are you? The visitor smiled softly and said, it seems that Tsunayashiro Toki-sama has recalled it. Anyway, let me introduce myself again. My name is Tojo Ayaya, and I am here specially to remove the corpses. A cancer in the soul world. Chapter 75 Massacre. The wailing echoed through Central 46. After hearing the name Tojoki Ayaya, everyone present in room 46 was so frightened that they collapsed to the ground. Tsunayashiro Toki, who was originally sitting in the top seat, was even more frightened and incontinent at this moment. Some of them have probably forgotten that 300 years ago, they looked down upon an ordinary trial. A deputy captain was easily deprived of his zanpakuto and was sentenced to death without any process. These people in high positions still know who started the war. The people in room 46 still know the name of the enemy leader, but such an enemy leader suddenly appears in room 46 and wants to attack them. Whatever you do, the results will be obvious. Although he was smiling, the murderous intention towards these old guys was clearly captured by these drunkards. Judging the life and death of an ordinary Shinigami is a common occurrence for the people in room 46. But they really couldn't imagine that one day, the people they had judged would raise their swords against them. Tojo Ayaya shook her head and said, Zamali. Get rid of these guys. Daocheng looked at the cowardly behavior of the 46th room in front of him and said, although I am determined to execute these idiots, the scene of these guys in front of me. If I take the initiative to attack them, it will become my shame. These idiots are not qualified to make me take action. Then, everyone in the lobby saw another figure coming from behind Tojo Ayaya from outside the door following Tojo's instructions. This figure was very tall. When he was fully revealed, it was discovered that he was a sturdy man with black skin and yellow eyes. The bone spurs along the top of his head formed a style similar to a mohawk hairstyle. Although his appearance is very similar to humans and Shinigami, the spiritual pressure emanating from his body allows the guard team to identify his identity at a glance. No, it's the enemy. Hurry up and draw your zanpakuto to meet the enemy. The enemy is attacking Central 46. In room 46, although the guard team all have more or less opinions on Central 46, they are members of the Gotei 13 after all. Seeing Zomari suddenly appearing in front of them, they immediately pulled out their zanpakuto to stop him from moving forward. However, how could the Shinigami stop a Spada Arankar with just these ordinary Shinigami? Zamali clasped his hands and expressed condolences. Arrogant Shinigami, this is the order of His Majesty the Great Sword City. I must implement his will and purify your sins. Brush. Zamali turned around and came to the center of the old guys in room 46. His zanpakuto was covered with the blood of the guard team Shinigami. Zomari's speed was too fast for these official level Shinigami. They couldn't even notice Zomari drawing and releasing the sword, and his head was already missing. With one simple blow, the guarding Shinigami team was wiped out. Ah, run quickly, this hateful monster is coming. I am a noble of Soul Society. I don't want to die yet. Advertisement. Seeing such a bloody scene suddenly, no matter how stupid these guys in room 46 are, they understand that the Arankar in front of them is here to kill them. At this moment, under the threat of death, the members of this ancient Soul Society's highest judicial body fled in all directions. Daocheng quietly looked at the ugly appearance of the members of room 46 and sneered slightly, as this the sage of the Soul Society. He is really ugly. What was reflected in Tojo Ayaya's pupils was, Zomari cleanly killed the members of the 46th chamber in front of him with one knife. After all, how could a Soul Society noble who had been pampered since childhood outrun Arankar, who had survived in the cruel jungle of Hueco Mundo? A minute later, the walls and floor of the originally clean and solemn hall were covered with bloodstains. 45 members of Central 46 have already collapsed on the ground, lifeless. Tsunayashiro Toki is the last surviving member of the 46 chambers. He is no longer as domineering as before. He knelt on the ground and begged with tears in his eyes. Please, don't kill me. Am I willing to give you everything I have, wealth or wives, concubines, and maids? I can give you anything. Even under my order, you can return to Soul Society and serve as captain, even the chief captain. Quote. Toshiro almost laughed out loud when he heard Tsunayashiro's words. The corners of Toshiro's mouth raised, and his eyes showed disdain and ridicule. He sneered. There is nothing in this world that needs to be rewarded to me. My name is Toshiro Ayaya, the person who can reshape the three realms and turn everything around. Daocheng's voice echoed throughout the space, with incomparable confidence and domineering. The moment Daocheng's words fell, Zamali raised the knife without hesitation. The sharp blade sliced through the air, making a crisp sound. Tsunayashiro Toki's head was instantly separated from his body, and blood spurted out and splashed on the ground. His expression was still fixed on the cry and begging just now, as if time had stopped. The air was filled with a strong smell of blood, which was nauseating. However, Daocheng didn't care. He looked at the scene in front of him indifferently, without any mercy in his eyes. For him, this is just a necessary step towards his goal. Daocheng ignored the mess of blood all over the floor of room 46 and said, let's keep going. Don't forget the purpose of our coming here this time. It's to get back my 300-year-old sword. Soul sword. Zomali said. Yes, Master Daocheng. Tojo opened the secret passage under the 46th chamber and said, go and retrieve my unique and true Zanpakuto, and then completely end this decaying cemetery. This will be the last dance of the Soul Society. ... Toshiro slowly told Yamamoto Genryusai what he had just done. Finally, I got back the Zanpakuto that had been taken away from you Soul Society for 300 years. After Toshiro briefly narrated the incident, he said to Yamamoto Genryusai again, okay, I'm done. You just fought with half of my strength. Didn't you already use up all your strength? Yamamoto Genryusai Shigekuni. Chapter 76 The Threat of Tojo Ayaya. 0.5 Yamamoto Genryusai. Yamamoto Genryusai heard Toshiro's taunt, and immediately activated his Bankai. Nonsense. Bankai. Sun-like flames emerged from Yamamoto's body again, and the high temperature was once again ready to scorch Soul Society. Seeing the situation, Daocheng chuckled, and the black disc in his hand flashed past. Black lines erupted from the disc again, like a black hole, absorbing Yamamoto Genryusai's flames. Yamamoto Genryusai watched in shock as the flames on his body and the sword were pulled by the black thread into the black disc in Tojo Ayaya's hand. Toshiro Aya Yoruichi explained while blocking Yamamoto Genryusai's Bankai. Yamamoto Genryusai, your judgment that I can't block your Bankai is wrong. It's not that your Bankai cannot be blocked, it's just that your power is too strong. Only I can achieve suppression, so I order any clone with half of my power not to Bankai you. Toshiro Ayaya looked at the black sealing disc in her hand and said meaningfully, what are you going to do? This disc contains your Bankai. The reason why the Bankai sealing is stable this time is my spiritual pressure. It's sealed on the disc. Once I am attacked, the seal may be cancelled, and your Bankai's power will lose control in the disc and even go completely berserk, until the entire Soul Society is destroyed. How are you going to defeat me? Yamamoto Genryusai Shigekuni. Quote. After hearing Yamamoto Ayano Tojo's threat, Genryusai ran towards him angrily and shouted, "You be asterisk 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 D." Tojo Ayaya retracted her right hand and slowly pulled out her own Zanpakuto from her waist. At the same time, she held the Zanpakuto upside down and turned the blade in a circle. Watching Tojo Ayaya pull out her Zanpakuto, Yamamoto Genryusai stopped and relaxed his grip on Ryujin Jaka. Once he attacks Tojo Castle Ayaya, there will be the danger of his own Bankai burning out of control and even destroying Soul Society. At the same time, his own Bankai has been blocked by the enemy, and Yamamoto Genryusai just wants death in front of Tojo. Yamamoto Genryusai Shigekuni, even if I didn't open my eyes, I could already see your death clearly. Yamamoto Genryusai Shigekuni, your existence is almost equivalent to the history of Soul Society. I will not let go of you like this. Toshiro looked at Captain Yamamoto coldly and said, farewell, Captain. Tojo Ayaya raised the Zanpakuto in her hand, the blade shining faintly in the light. After a few seconds, the cold blade suddenly fell. The moment the Tojo Zanpakuto fell, Yamamoto Genryusai seemed to recall an event from the past 1,000 years. It was a sunny afternoon. The young Jingaku Shunsui sneaked into his room again. He was still surprised that there were paintings hanging in my room. When Chun Shui was apologizing, he once again mentioned the painting hanging in my room. In that painting was a man with a knife and a burning body. I looked at the painting and said, that was a monster that appeared in Soul Society a long time ago. It appeared when Soul Society was in chaos and made Soul Society even more chaotic. It will never appear again. If he shows up, I will never come back here again. Yamamoto Genryusai's thoughts returned to the present. Blood spurted from his mouth, and his body was cut open from the waist. His upper body fell to the ground weakly and was still washed away by the rain, but his lower body still maintained a standing posture in the center. Advertisement. At the moment when Yamamoto Genryusai was cut in half by Tojo, everyone in the Seraiti, whether it was Shinigami or Arankar, felt the moment when the scorching high-temperature spiritual pressure disappeared. Jashiro, Toshiro, Sui Feng, and Komamura all shook their bodies, and all showed incredible expressions. The strongest Shinigami in 1,000 years was defeated. The relationship between Kyoraku Shunsui and Captain Yamamoto is deeper. As soon as he sensed Yamamoto's death, the usually calm uncle lost his mind for the first time. Kyoraku turned to look in the direction of the captain, and shouted anxiously and sadly, Mr. Yamamoto. Ulquiorra turned around and followed Kyoraku Shunsui, swung his Zanpakuto to strike, and said, because of your intentions, Shinigami, you have exposed your flaw. Kyoraku Shunsui, because of the death of Captain Yamamoto, the one who was most saddened by all the Shinigami present was the one who had been with the old man for the longest time. At this moment, Kyoraku Shunsui's sword skills completely lost their order, and he could only use his spiritual pressure to slash randomly. Seeing Ulquiorra blocking the way, his eyes were no longer as calm as before. Kyoraku Shunsui anxiously used his spiritual pressure with both hands at the same time, swung his sword to chop off Ulquiorra's head, not caring that the door was wide open for him to approach. Ulquiorra turned around, pointed his Zanpakuto directly at Kyoraku Shunsui's right eye, and said without any emotion, because of your heart, your sword skills have made countless breakthroughs. And the most eye-catching thing is here. Quote exclamation mark exclamation mark exclamation mark quote. Kyoraku Shunsui watched as his eye was stabbed by Ulquiorra's Zanpakuto, and then he slashed together, cutting off Kyoraku's right eye and a piece of flesh on his right face. Ulchio stretched out his fingers, condensed a green flash on the top, and said, "This time, you are completely defeated because of your heart." Brush, swipe, swipe, several false flashes shot out, without exception, penetrated Kyoraku Shunsui's body and severely damaged some of his organs. Under the blessing of the knife wound and the virtual flash penetrating wound, Kyoryu Shunsui threw his body forward, and collapsed to the ground with blood flowing all over the ground and being seriously injured. It's still raining. The heavy rain caused by Yamamoto Genryusai Bankai Zanha Tachi is still falling, but Yamamoto Genryusai has been cut in two by the sword castle. His feet were covered with blood, and his upper body was lying down, but the sword he held in his hand did not let go after his death. Toshiro Ayaya looked at Yamamoto's miserable appearance and said, "Isn't it true that the dignified head of the Shinigami died no different from the useless idiots in room 46? It's really horrible." Daochung tidied himself up, sheathed his sword, and prepared to leave. Just when Toshiro was about to leave here, he found that his clothes were tightly held in the other hand of Captain Yamamoto. Toshiro Ayaya frowned when she saw this, and tugged hard to pull out the clothes that were caught. Tear, there was a sound of tearing cloth. Unexpectedly, a corner of the clothes was torn under this tug, and the incomplete fabric was still held in Yamamoto Genryusai's hands. Quote question mark question mark question mark quote. Tachi turned around and looked down at Yamamoto's hand holding his clothes tightly, and said in surprise, "Since you were willing to die when you were fighting with me, you were willing to die by my sword. Next. Then why do you want to prevent me from leaving after death? It's really hard to understand." Yamamoto Genryusai Shigekuni. Chapter 77 Devouring Spiritual Pressure. Completely ravaging soul society. Toshiro looked at Yamamoto's body and said slowly, "As a person's ability becomes larger and larger, desire will gradually occupy everyone's mind. This is the beast instinct deep in everyone's heart. But, Yamamoto Genryusai, you were able to seal away your thousand-year beastly nature and become overflowing with kindness, value honor, and be obsessed with ridiculous justice and boring honor. You even abandoned your past self for soul society and became pedantic. Stop moving forward." Tojoki Ayaya sighed. "Yamamoto Genryusai Shigekuni, you have become weak. I know your past history, and in my eyes you will be reflected in your figure that was wrapped in flames like an evil ghost thousands of years ago. In my eyes, you are an out-and-out murderer. Ghost. In order to kill the enemy, you don't hesitate to use everything, let alone humans who have nothing to do with you, and you don't even care about your own subordinates." Quote. Daochung slowly squatted down and said, "Now you are not only burdened with soul society, but also the survival of this world. In order to maintain that so-called world, you stood in front of me and fought with me, and finally lost. You were burdened with the thing finally became a tool to seal your instincts, and this seal also made you quickly defeated by me. That's why you're weak, Yamamoto Genryusai Shigekuni." Tojo slowly pulled out another Zanpakuto stuck in his waist. This Zanpakuto Tojo has been carrying with him since he appeared in Soul Society. Naturally, it is not the one that was confiscated by Chamber 46. He looked at Yamamoto's body and said in a tone as if he was a living person, "Since you want to fight me for the so-called glory and justice, the Soul Society that you stubbornly protect. Then, I will come and devour your spiritual pressure, let you use your own power to witness the future of the three realms with your own eyes." Tojo pulled out the mysterious Zanpakuto and recited its Shikai language, "Swallow everything. Ghoul." The Zanpakuto in Tachi's hand instantly transformed and turned into a long sword covered with swirling serrations. This military sword was made by the 9th Espada Aeronio Alurueri in the original work, but it can be said that it is not the same. Toshiro put a lot of effort into this Zanpakuto. In the original work, Glotoneria is both Aeronio's real Zanpakuto and his special ability. The shape is not like a sword, but is transformed by the left hand, and an organ similar to the mouth of a sea anemone appears from the palm. Nakyu is a skill that swallows the dead hollow and takes its abilities and spiritual pressure as its own. The source is Metastasia's spiritual body fusion ability, which is a special ability unique to Aronio. It is precisely because of this ability that Aronio has unlimited evolutionary possibilities, and because of this, he was favored by Aizen and was able to become one of the first Espadas as Jillian. But after Daochung captured Elonia, he carefully studied his so-called ability to swallow evolution. It is said that it can evolve infinitely, but there is only the possibility of evolution. Aronio's spiritual body fusion ability was too useless, and the spiritual pressure he swallowed was not completely used for his own use. The manifestation in Sword City looked like a messy collection of spiritual pressure blocks, which could not be effectively integrated and utilized. Moreover, another fatal weakness of this ability is that it is afraid of the sun. It cannot be used under the sun. It can only continue to use the ability in the shadow where the sun is not shining. However, through the continuous injection of different qualities of modified souls and neutralization experiments in Sword City, and the absolute transformation by Hōgyoku, the shortcoming of photophobia has been completely overcome. At the same time, Toshiro Ayaya restored chaos and gave it the ability to unify and integrate spiritual pressure, achieving the perfect collection of souls to achieve unlimited devouring. It can truly devour everything, whether it is Shinigami, Daxu, etc. Or a quincy, the properties of all different spiritual pressures will be forcibly converted and turned into a supply of one's own spiritual power. Advertisement. Therefore, the ghoul in Tochung's hands can be said to have the most perfect special ability to recover power, second only to the Holy Spirit. Toshiro Ayaya raised Nakyu and pointed it at the two bodies of Yamamoto Genryusai, saying, Soul Society will be reshaped. When the Gotei 13 team stopped moving forward thousands of years ago, they were doomed. The future he faces. The Zanpakuto then seemed to form a phantom like a giant mouth of the abyss, and in an instant, Yamamoto Genryusai's body that was cut in half was completely swallowed into it. As Yamamoto's spirit body was completely swallowed by the ghoul, the remaining spiritual pressure and soul power were completely absorbed by Tojo. Originally, after the death of Yamamoto Genryusai, due to the spiritual power, that is, the concentration of spiritual pressure was too high, the body after death could not return to soul society in the form of spiritual children, which had an impact on the turnover of spiritual children in the three realms. So after the 1,000-year bloody battle, the new Gotei 13 held a soul burial ceremony for him, causing Yamamoto's soul to fall into hell. At this moment, Toshiro Ayaya has completely devoured Yamamoto's spiritual pressure without any leakage. It is even less likely that there will be any problems with the spiritual energy turnover later. Toshiro has really contributed his part to the peace of the three realms. Strength. Hitsugaya Toshiro, Komamura Zojun, and even Unohana, the veteran captain for thousands of years, all gritted their teeth and showed incredulous expressions after sensing that Toshiro had completely absorbed Yamamoto Genryusai's corpse into a spirit. Especially Komamura, who was in the left formation. His eyes were round and he gritted his teeth and said angrily, Touchy. I will never let you go. I will never let anyone insult His Excellency Genryusai. The rain continued to fall, but there was no one in front of Daochung. Everything left behind by the spirit body of Yamamoto Genryusai was swallowed up by the ghoul. Daochung stood up straight and said under the heavy rain, Now we have entered the finishing work. Inform the entire Arrancar Legion. With Tojo's order, the connection between Tojo and all Arrancars was instantly connected, and all the Arrancars in the Seraiti received the purge order from Tojo Ayaya. After all Arrancar received the final order from Knife City, they simultaneously opened a strange black portal in the air. Black accent. The Shinigami side saw a strange space that began to fragment and seemed to appear again. Several Shinigami fish looked at this strange scene and said in confusion, What is this? Is it the enemy's miscellaneous soldiers? Quote. The next moment, countless Jillian suddenly emerged from the strange space and rushed towards Shinigami. A fat-looking Shinigami pointed at Jillian and said to his companions who wanted to retreat, Don't be afraid, you're just a B***********************************************************************************************************************. The next moment, Jillian suddenly pounced on him and bit off the head of the trash fish Shinigami in one bite. This was completely out of the ordinary Jillian's speed. It was completely out of the ordinary Jillian's strength. Several well-known Arrancars collectively laughed at each other. Miscellaneous soldier. Does it look like it's Jillian? This is not an ordinary Jillian, but a special Jillian transformed by Master Daochung and Sal Apollo, enough to make ordinary people an absolute killing machine that Shinigami is completely overwhelmed by. No need to worry, please let me hear your screams next. Chapter 78 Aizen is curious about the power of the Soul King. The system sounds again. After Daochung commanded Zomari to finish the massacre of the 46th room, after a few minutes when everyone had left and no one noticed, 3 hidden black shadows quietly appeared. Although all 3 of them are wrapped in black robes, looking at their figures, they can be identified as Aizen Sosuke, Tosen Konami, and Ichimaru Jin. Aizen and the other 3 suddenly appeared like ghosts from the corridor of the Great Soul Book in the underground conference room of room 46. Ichimaru Jin raised his eyebrows and pretended to be surprised and said, Hey, all the members of Central 46 were killed. What a surprise. Are there still such brave people in Soul Society? After seeing this scene of massacre, Aizen instantly understood who was responsible for the tragic scene in front of him. Aizen looked at the hall filled with the smell of blood, and he couldn't help but become a little more interested, saying, There was no one in Soul Society before, but now there is one from Hueco Mundo. For Aizen, although he had certain expectations, he did not expect that Daochung would adopt such a large army attack method, and it would also be a very cruel war mode. Once the order for war is issued, no matter what happens next, it is impossible to predict easily. Aizen couldn't help but admire Toshiro Ayaya for his daring actions. This kind of determination is unique in the 3 realms. Aizen is consistent with Toshiro Ayaya on this point, and he also has no favorable impression of Room 46. If it weren't for the declaration of war by Sword City that facilitated his sneaking into the Great Spirit Book corridor, Aizen would not have hesitated to use his sword against the 46th chamber in order to obtain the king's information. Regarding the Great Spiritual Arts corridor, it is located in the underground meeting hall of Central 46 and is a very large and systematic database. It records a series of major events and secrets in the Soul Society from ancient times to the present, but this place is inaccessible to ordinary people. It has nothing to do with Shinigami's will, and is forced to collect and record all the events and information in Soul Society. Aizen also inquired about the production information of the King Key from this place. However, because the eyes of Sword City belong to the power of the Spirit King that is rewarded by the system, there is no relevant record in the Great Spirit Art corridor. However, the connotation exists, but it has been Aizen continued to rummage through the information and guessed the source of the power of Toshiro's eyes. Aizen smiled slightly. Is he the Spirit King? Although I always feel a little familiar, I didn't expect that I would come into contact with his power so early. Aizen felt the incomplete Hōgyoku he held, combined with this experience in the Great Spirit Book corridor. At this moment, Aizen also remembered an event from 100 years ago. In his early years, he discovered that part of the soul of a little Rukongai girl with wavy orange hair contained extremely unusual power, so he merged her soul into Hōgyoku. Regarding this little girl, she should be Matsumoto Rangaku, the vice captain of the 10th division now, right? It's really interesting. Aizen himself really didn't expect that the Soul King who had been trying to pull him down would actually have gained part of his power already, and that he had come into contact with the Soul King so early. Advertisement. Aizen said lightly. And I didn't expect that Jashiro, you also have such a strange thing. So is this the reason for your arrogance? It's really a little funny. Dong Xian stepped forward to ask Aizen for instructions. Lord Aizen, now we know a little bit about the power of Tojo Ayaya's eyes, and we also know the method of making the king key. What should we do next? How? Aizen chuckled, and said as if he was sure of victory, of course we have to visit our captain of the 13th division, Jashiro Yukataki first. After Aizen learned that part of the Soul King's power fell to the lower world, he showed a strong interest in this power. Now the importance of the Soul King's power in his heart has greatly increased, almost as much as that of Hōgyoku, whom he has cherished for hundreds of years. Toshiro Ayaya looked at the badly damaged Seraiti. The entire palace was filled with flames, and the shrill screams of Shinigami kept coming and going. Although Sword City has been the king of Hueco Mundo for 100 years, Sword City has spent 300 years of its total life of more than 400 years in Hueco Mundo. But he was still born in Soul Society after all. Well, but even Captain Yamamoto was chopped in half by him, and he didn't even leave his spiritual body behind, but completely devoured him with ghoul. He also issued an order to completely ravage Soul Society. It is too funny to choose mercy at this time. Boom. Boom. There were several continuous explosions. Toshiro looked at the place where the explosion occurred in the Seraiti. This place was covered with low mountains and crisscrossed by rivers. It was easy to think that this must have been the most beautiful place in the Seraiti. It's a pity that Arankar and Shinigami are now completely destroyed on the battlefield. Is this a battle? The location where he is standing now, the Two-Death Hill, is similar to the symbol of authority in the Soul Society. 300 years ago, he was sentenced to death here by Chamber 46. As a result, when the time came, Shuangshu was destroyed in the aftermath of the battle, and the hill of Shuangshu was changed beyond recognition on the battlefield. As the leader of the Arankar Legion, he completely trampled Shuangshu under his feet. Lord Tojo. When the two floor-sweeping maids, Lori Ivan and Minori Maria, saw Tojo standing alone on the double altar watching the Seraiti, they walked behind him and knelt down. Came down to report something. Sir Tojo, the Tsunayashiro family has been completely eradicated due to our efforts. The clan territory has been completely blown up, and the genocide of Tsunayashiro has been achieved. If Sword City 300 years ago heard this news, he would undoubtedly be very excited, but now Sword City has killed Yamamoto Genryusai, devoured his spirit body, and wiped out all the 46 chambers. A complete blow to the Gotei 13. While thinking, Daocheng raised his head and felt the wash of the rain, and said, "It's over, time flies so fast." Ding, congratulations to host for achieving the achievement Seraiti and getting. Chapter 79 Jashiro Yukataki's Danger. Aizen finally takes action. Although Soul Society's high-end combat power Yamamoto Genryusai and Arankar leader Tojo Ayaya have already decided the winner, Yamamoto, who is the leader of Shinigami, also likes to propose a cut-in-half package. But in the entire Seraiti, Shinigami and Arankar still have not decided the winner. The captain level and Espada are still fighting, while the deputy captain and a series of officers are also fighting. The battle between Jashiro Yukataki and Stark had ended long ago. Stark saw that Jashiro Yukataki was in poor health. He voluntarily quit the battle with Jashiro, and instead ran away to other places to start a fishing battle with other Shinigami team members. Coyote Stark always looks lazy and not very interested in external things. But his biggest characteristic is that he hates trouble and loneliness, especially loneliness. Because he hates loneliness, he also values his companions. Although he claimed that he would not avenge his dead companions, his heart was still shaken by this. He is like a different type in Espada who doesn't like fighting. Even if he is facing an enemy with swords, Stark will show mercy according to the situation. Jashiro saw Stark leaving his captain level and running to fight with those Shinigami team members. It was also obvious that Stark had no intention of fighting against him at this moment. Jashiro Yukataki is not only gentle to the members of the same team, but also to the members of other divisions. Although he is frail and sickly, he will still come forward if something happens to his subordinates. As the captain of the 13th division, he is kind, honest and peace-loving, and treats Shinigami, humans and even Arankar equally. After Stark walked away, Jashiro Yukataki immediately began to command his men and mobilize the entire team to transport the wounded to the 4th Division garrison for treatment. During the transportation process, one of the girls with short black hair, Shinigami, was returning to report to Jashiro Yukataki after transporting the wounded. She has short curly hair and is a petite black-haired beautiful girl Shinigami. She has deep purple eyes and a single bunch of bangs hanging down to her forehead. Wearing a Death Tyrant costume, with a Zanpakuto at his waist. This girl Shinigami greeted Jashiro from a distance and said loudly, "Captain Jashiro. The last batch of wounded here have all been transported to the treatment area, and the mission has been basically completed successfully. Ah, good job. Next. After hearing the girl Shinigami's greeting and the news of completing the task, Jashiro turned around and said with the same warm smile as before. Suddenly, Jashiro's expression changed and he said in a hurried tone, Kuchiki. Get out of the way. Quote exclamation mark exclamation mark exclamation mark quote. The full name of this girl Shinigami is Kuchiki Rukia. Although she is currently under the operation of her brother Byakuya Kuchiki and has never been given a seat as a captain in the squad, she actually has the same strength as a senior captain or vice captain. After Rukia heard Jashiro's warning, she immediately realized that there were two streams of spiritual pressure from Arankar hidden around her. Ace Ringer Vinyl and Demuvor Azad shouted and jumped out at the same time. Die. Shinigami, we all fight with the hope of completely defeating the Seraiti and making others stop laughing at us. These two Arankars hate others including their own superiors, looking down on them very much, and Daochung also followed the original work and directly arranged for them to serve as guards in the underground passage of Zai Palace. Both for their own image and to kill Shinigami, the two specially selected Rukia who was alone this time and prepared to kill her in one fell swoop. After sensing the enemy's attack, she reacted immediately. Relying on her years of sense, Lucia swooped forward and forcibly dodged the first false attack. Advertisement. But then, Ace Ringer Vinyl and Demuvor Azad both wielded their Zanpakutos at the same time and slashed at Rukia, completely locking Rukia while she was still reeling. Hateful. Jashiro screamed inwardly. Although he had used Shunpo to rush there in an instant, due to his physical condition and the previous battle with Stark, although it was not very intense, it also consumed him too much. At this time, Jashiro had no time to rush to Lu Chi. Save her. Rukia looked at the approaching blade with nowhere to hide. She closed her eyes in despair. Is this it? Goodbye brother. I'm sorry sister, and Lord Kyan, do I have to see you too? Brush, swipe. When Lucia accepted her fate, two crisp slashes suddenly sounded. Lucia opened her eyes, only to find three figures suddenly appeared in front of her. It was none other than Captain Aizen Sosuke of the 5th Division, Captain Ichimaru Jin of the 3rd Division, and Konami Tosen, the captain of the 9th Division. At this moment, the three captains of the Gotei 13 appeared in front of Rukia. Ichimaru Jin still squinted his eyes like a snake and showed a strange smile to Rukia. Ichimaru Jin was still holding his own Zanpakuto, magic spear, in his hand, and there was a little bloodstain on it. There was no doubt that Ichimaru Jin was the one who saved Rukia when she was attacked just now. At this time, Jashiro saw the sudden appearance of Aizen and the others and rescued Rukia in time, and he breathed a long sigh of relief. With the rescue of the three captains, Arankar of this level can naturally be easily taken care of. Jashiro Yukitaki greeted the three of Aizen and said, Captain Aizen, Captain Tosen, Captain Ichimaru, why haven't we seen you since Tojo Ayaya started the war against Soul Society? I'm still worried. Where are you three? It's great to see you are okay. When Aizen saw Jashiro again at this time, he had a completely different look from before, revealing an unfathomable meaning behind his eyes. Ichimaru Jin is still smiling, and it is difficult for others to find out anything behind his expression. His only goal at the moment is still Aizen Sosuke. As long as Aizen's Hōgyoku is still in his hands, Ichimaru Jin's purpose will not change, to get back what Rangaku once lost. As for Tosen Konami, he originally believed that Central 46's verdict was unfair, and his purpose was to avenge his friends and join the Gotei 13. However, at this moment, both the 46th Chamber and Tsunayashiro have been eradicated by Tojo Ayaya, but Tosen Konami is still following Aizen, and he still wants to see the righteous path that Aizen once promised. When looking at Jashiro's kind and grateful eyes, Aizen showed his usual gentle smile. Aizen slowly walked towards Jashiro and said, Hello, Captain Jashiro. Jashiro didn't understand what Aizen was going to do, and said puzzledly, Captain Aizen, what are you going to do? By the way, why didn't the three of you find you before? Your subordinates have suffered heavy casualties now, do you want me to go? Can you help me? Aizen smiled at Jashiro's kindness and said, Don't worry, Captain Jashiro, I appreciate your kindness. Whoosh, without warning, Aizen had already drawn his sword, and his Zanpakuto was inserted directly into Jashiro Yukitaki's heart. His Zanpakuto blade suddenly penetrated Jashiro Yukitaki's chest. Aizen said sadly, However, now I have another business, and I want Captain Jashiro to help solve it. Chapter 80 Aizen's Ambition. The still power of the Soul King's right hand. Jashiro looked at the Zanpakuto thrust into his heart and said in disbelief, Aizen. You. Aizen said coldly, For the specific reason, Captain Jashiro, I believe you also know what my goal is. Jashiro suffered such a serious injury in a short period of time. He couldn't catch his breath and said intermittently, Is it for Lord Mimihaki? Aizen. That's it. Aizen pulled out his Zanpakuto and put it back into its sheath. As Aizen pulled out his Zanpakuto, Jashiro's chest suddenly started to bleed. Jashiro is a lower-level noble in the Soul Society. He is the eldest brother of 8 brothers and sisters. He has been frail and sick since he was a child. When he was 3 years old, he first became ill, causing his hair color to turn completely white. When he was critically ill, his parents sent him to the ancestral hall of Mimihaki, the one-eyed god tier who was transformed from the left arm of the Soul King. One-eyed god tier, Mimihaki took away Jashiro Yukitaki's lungs and fused himself with his internal organs, allowing Jashiro to survive and giving Jashiro the power to become a substitute for the Soul King. God tier. A ritual in which the indigenous god, one-eyed god tier, who was transformed into the Spirit King's left arm, gives Jashiro's power and spreads it throughout his body. During the initiation ceremony, multiple black eye totems will appear on Jashiro's body. When this power spreads to the whole body, it means that the whole body of the caster is dedicated to the one-eyed god tier, and becomes the incarnation of the one-eyed god tier, which can temporarily replace the spiritual king and play a role in maintaining the three realms. Jashiro is similar to a parasitism, and at this moment Aizen stabbed Jashiro's heart directly with his Zanpakuto. Aizen's spiritual pressure followed the Zanpakuto and completely destroyed Jashiro Yukitaki's heart. With Jashiro's death, his spiritual pressure dissipated, and his spiritual body gradually became unable to maintain itself. The Soul King's right hand residing in Jashiro's body subsequently separated from Jashiro's body. Aizen watched quietly as Jashiro's body slowly collapsed, as if time had frozen at this moment. As Jashiro's body collapsed, a strange pattern slowly emerged from his torso like a living thing. As this part of the power of the Soul King. This twisted and crawling look is really ugly, Aizen said, feeling the strange power emerging from Jashiro's body. Aizen then sighed. Although it is ugly, it is also in line with the evolutionary laws of the three realms. Just like a weak and twisted caterpillar turns into a beautiful butterfly through the process of pupation. This is the evolution in reality. Is this the world? The wonder of it. Captain Jashiro. Rukia on the side saw Captain Aizen suddenly attack her own captain, and her mind went completely blank for a moment. Moreover, the Zanpakuto stabbed directly through the heart. Rukia had no idea why Aizen would kill Captain Jashiro directly at this moment. Although Jashiro Yukitaki had been Kuchiki's direct boss before, he treated her more like an amiable father. This special care made Rukia full of trust and dependence on Captain Jashiro. Driven by instinct, Lucia desperately freed her Zanpakuto and prepared to face this life and death battle. Ling Wu, Soda no Shirayuki. After Shikai, the Zanpakuto's blade, guard, and handle are all shown in pure white. The blade is oval in shape with 6 hollows. There is a pattern on the front of the handle and a white ribbon connected to the end. Advertisement. At this moment, Rukia did not understand the power of her Zanpakuto, and thought that her Zanpakuto's ability was to fight by releasing cold air from the blade and condensing ice and snow. Second dance. By Lien. Kuchiki Rukia stabs the ground with the tip of Soda no Shirayuki's sword in 4 directions, and then forms an avalanche in front of her body, releasing cold air powerful enough to freeze the enemy. In the original work, Kuchiki Rukia used this move to briefly freeze Grimmjow, who was trying to kill Kurosaki Ichigo, in ice when she appeared in the world. She also used this move to defeat the White Sand Guard in Hueco Mundo, whose body was completely covered with sand. Troll Lunu Genka. Prior to this, Rukia was already able to skillfully use the first dance and the second dance during the trial at Mount Kifushi with the former Deputy Captain Shiba Kaien in the 13th Division, which shows that Rukia is very comfortable with this move. Just when Rukia's attack and cold energy were condensed and about to be launched towards Aizen, Ichimaru Jin suddenly shunpo and flashed behind Rukia. Ichimaru Jin said calmly, Kuchiki Rukia, although your loyalty to the commander is commendable, it is better for you to sleep now. Rukia, Beifu, Hakafu. The combination of Hado and Bakudo causes the opponent's consciousness in the turbid light to fall into a comatose state for a while, and the reaction of spiritual pressure will also temporarily disappear. At the moment when Rukia was about to attack Aizen, Ichimaru Jin struck with lightning speed. His movements were as fast as lightning, instantly interrupting Lucia Balian's launch. At the same time, he cleverly used Beifu to trap Rukia in it. This skill not only puts Rukia into a coma, but also temporarily eliminates her spiritual pressure. Everything happened so fast that people were caught off guard. Are you kidding me? If Kuchiki Rukia were to hit Aizen's hand directly, and Aizen passed by with a knife, everything would not end so easily. But at this time, Aizen had no time to pay attention to Rukia, and his attention was entirely on the fallen Jashiro. At this moment, the Soul King's right hand had already separated from the fallen Jashiro Yukitaki, and his size suddenly expanded several times. The powerful power of the Soul King condensed into substance in the air and formed a huge right hand, which rushed towards Aizen with its teeth and claws. Aizen looked at this right hand and said meaningfully, "Is this the power of the Soul King?" After losing his place of parasitism, he has become so unsightly. The so-called Lord of the Three Realms turns out to be this. Aizen thought. After losing Jashiro's body, do you want to go out independently, or do you want to find a new spirit body? Very interesting. Aizen took out his Hōgyoku from his arms and chuckled, but I have already found a place for you. The Soul King's right hand, Lord Mimihaki. Chapter 81 Compliment. The birth of Hōgyoku, which is more perfect than the original. As this the Soul King's right hand. I descended to the lower world but became my nourishment, Hōgyoku. As the Lord of the Three Realms, I lost my right hand. How ironic. Aizen looked down at the Hōgyoku that had been sucked into his right hand. After absorbing this part of the Spirit King's power, Aizen's Hōgyoku changed his appearance in an instant. Although the original Hōgyoku is still in a bright and glowing form, there is no doubt that the light inside is still more of a dim state. After absorbing the Spirit King's right hand in Jashiro's body, Hōgyoku was brightened for a moment, and suddenly became dazzling instead of being dull like before. Aizen looked at Hōgyoku's change and said in surprise, "As this?" The complete Hōgyoku held by Aizen in the original work is composed of Soul King fragments, Shinigami souls and hollow souls. Except for the lack of the human part, its composition is almost exactly the same as the soul of the protagonist Kurosaki Ichigo. In other words, Hōgyoku is almost equal to a small Ichigo. All creatures in the Shinigami worldview are sown with eyes by the Soul King, and omniscience and omnipotence rely on the order of magnitude filling of the eyes to expand themselves. The so-called Hōgyoku is just a thing that relies on the fusion of souls to get close to the power of the Soul King. There are too many things containing the power of the Soul King in the entire three realms. The Soul King's right hand Mimihaki, the Soul King's left hand Panita, Gerald, the heart of the Soul King, Aura, the Soul King's Adam's apple, and a group of Fullbringers in this world. Hōgyoku is just something that is replaced at the end. Hōgyoku is a minimal carrier of the Spirit King's will, which can directly grant the holder what he prays for to a certain extent. Urahara Kazuki's original intention of creating Hōgyoku was not to break the boundaries of his own soul like Aizen, but to quickly use Hōgyoku to temporarily support the three realms and maintain this world when the Soul King has an emergency. In The Four Nobles, Tsunayashiro Tokunada once said that Sumuya Rain and Hanakari Jinda, the artificial beings from Urahara Kazuki's store, can replace the Soul King by inserting Hōgyoku in a large number of souls at critical moments and become a wedge that fixes the three realms. The incomplete Hōgyoku in Aizen's hand directly came into contact with the power of the Soul King, and was instantly raised to a higher level. It makes up for the original lack. Although the Hōgyoku held by Aizen is still unstable, there is no doubt that it has transformed into a complete Hōgyoku. Is this the power of the Soul King? It makes Hōgyoku complete in an instant. After feeling the Hōgyoku in his palm, Aizen sighed. Didn't you expect that Urahara Kazuki was also wrong? He didn't fully realize the true effectiveness of Hōgyoku. Figure it out. Urahara Kazuki thought that the Hōgyoku he created was a substance that could break the boundary between Shinigami and Hollow. In fact, it was not the case. He just hoped that Hōgyoku could break the boundary between Hollow and Shinigami, so Hōgyoku would break the boundary between Shinigami and Hollow according to Kazuki's heart. Quote. Aizen opened his eyes and exclaimed. The real power of Hōgyoku is that as long as you have the strength to realize a certain wish, you can realize the development of a person's inner wish according to his or her heart. In addition, due to the special addition of the Soul King's right hand, Hōgyoku now possesses a power called stillness. Aizen is still feeling the magical thing lying faintly on his hand, the power to realize the manifestation of spiritual wishes and the special power called stillness. Look, that was the noise coming from here just now. The sudden burst of spiritual pressure here, and the huge palm that looks like an eye, what are these? Advertisement. Hurry up and have a look. Most of the members of the 13th Division were arranged by Jashiro to transport the wounded. When all the wounded in one place were transferred to the treatment team, their mission was over. But when they came back, they saw this strange scene. Suddenly a huge burst of spiritual pressure burst out, and then a strange substance with huge patterns suddenly appeared in the sky, and this strange substance could only be seen, but not perceived. It's like there is something clearly placed in front of you, but you can't touch the strange feeling of nothingness. In addition, this is where Captain Jashiro was before. Worried about his captain, the Shinigami members of the 13th Division could not help but speed up their pace. When the Shinigami from Division 13 arrived at where Jashiro Yukitake was, they saw the scene in front of them that shocked them. Captain Jashiro was bleeding all over the ground and was lying limply on the cold ground. Beside him, there were three captains standing around him, Ichimaru Jin, Tosen Kanami and Aizen. The most eye-catching one was Aizen. He held a bead emitting a strange light in his hands and looked at it. This bead was like the brightest star in the night sky, emitting a dazzling brilliance. However, under this beautiful appearance, there is a mysterious and powerful power hidden, which makes people feel awe. What is this? Captain Aizen, Captain Tosen, Captain Ichimaru, why are you here? Nishibashi, don't go there, the captain has been stabbed through the chest. And it's a Zanpakuto. The Shinigami named Nishibashi, who still had some illusions at this time, stepped forward and asked, Captain Aizen. What is going on with all this? Captain Jashiro. Aizen smiled slightly after hearing this and replied, this is just a step on the road to becoming a king. All the Shinigami couldn't believe that Captain Aizen, who was usually elegant and easygoing, would actually say such a thing. Moreover, Aizen's eyes had changed at this moment. It was different from the gentleness in the past, but replaced by a sharp look with such absolute ambition. The ruthless eyes. Shinigami of the 13th Division looked at the unconscious Rukia not far away, Jashiro who was stabbed in the chest lying at Aizen's feet, and Aizen, Ichimaru Jin and Tosen Kanami who stood indifferently and watched. It seems that he knows something. The current behavior of Captain Jashiro is the result of the actions of the three captains in front of him. Seeing more and more Shinigami from Division 13 gathering, Ichimaru Jin put on a distressed expression and said, Captain Aizen, the situation seems to have gotten a little big. Silver, don't be afraid. Aizen smiled softly, and then said extremely cruel words. If there are only dusts gathered here, whether it is one particle or two, even a group, it will be insignificant. Several officers in the 13th Division were furious and cursed. Aizen. You be ***************. Do you want to betray Soul Society? Aizen smiled when he heard this. Humph, destroying a sad tomb, how about the betrayal? If even simple cleaning is not allowed, then this world is really irrelevant. Chapter 82 Aizen's Plan. The world that has been ignored. Aizen very flatly compared Soul Society to a tomb that needs to be cleaned. Everyone in the 13th Division stared with disbelief on their faces. One of the Shinigami team members swallowed a mouthful of saliva and said, Captain Aizen. Soul Society is a tomb that needs to be cleaned. Another Shinigami interrupted his question, pulled out his Zanpakuto and said, Don't be led astray by Aizen. We are members of the Gotei 13. We take the Gotei as our duty and are sworn to defend the Seraiti to the death. Quote. Aizen let out a long sigh. Does such an insignificant person of dust want to draw a sword against me? Some Shinigami of the 13th Division still couldn't believe that Aizen, the usually gentle captain of the 5th Division, would be so cruel to Jashiro, saying, "Is this really Captain Aizen? Captain Aizen will never virtual circle the enemy. Are you pretending to be with your abilities?" Aizen seemed to be very interested in these incredible performances of the 13th Division and grinned. "The enemy is pretending. That's okay. After all, none of you can really understand me. No, it should be said that no one in the 3 realms can truly understand me. Then Captain Jashiro. It was my hand." Aizen said noncommittally. "I judged that the power in Jashiro's body was something that must be captured, so I killed him. It's that simple." Shinigami, the other members of the 13th Division in the rear, shouted loudly, "Nishihashi, don't hesitate, that guy is not the Captain Aizen we remember at all. Hurry up and draw your Zanpakuto to fight." Aizen's glasses reflected a frightening light, and the corners of his mouth raised slightly, and he smiled. "Is this the Aizen Sosuke in your impression?" "I'm sorry, that kind of Aizen Sosuke never existed from the beginning." Quote. Aizen's voice still had a hint of ridicule and disdain, as if he was mocking the Shinigami of Division 13 for having such a shallow understanding of him. Immediately afterwards, Aizen's tone became calm and indifferent, and he said to Yin behind him, "Yin, please do it." As Aizen's words fell, the entire space seemed to be enveloped by an invisible pressure. Everyone in the 13th Division felt unprecedented fear and tension. Their eyes widened and they looked at Aizen in front of them in disbelief. Charge. Revenge for Captain Jashiro. All the Shinigami of the 13th Division rushed forward, their hearts filled with grief and anger. They all went into battle at this moment, rushing forward with the determination to fight to the death. Besides, even if they wanted to escape, it was impossible for them to escape in the hands of the 3 captains with their strength. Brush, swipe, swipe, the sound of a series of Zanpakuto slashing sounds came one after another. Although it was bloody, Aizen, Tosen Kanami, and Ichimaru Jin were chopping up melons and vegetables. Kill all the team members. A few of them wanted to sneak away, but Tosen Kanami was keenly aware of them and teleported over to end their lives. Looking at the corpses everywhere, Ichimaru Jin felt as if he had gone too far and said to Aizen, "It seems a little too much, Captain Aizen." Almost the entire team of the 13th Division was killed, and Captain Jashiro died. Soul Society will definitely notice this phenomenon, so where should we hide? Advertisement. Tosen said dissatisfiedly. "Ichimaru, don't disturb Aizen-sama." Quote. Ichimaru Jin said as if he was surprised, "Captain Aizen, where can we go now? Is it to the present world?" Hiding. Aizen said as usual, "I don't need to hide anymore. But under the current situation, Soul Society will definitely not be able to stay any longer, and living in this world is one of the options." "But, Jin, who said that there are only 3 realms in this world? There is another place that is often ignored. How could you forget it? Another world outside the 3 realms. Could it be?" Tosen seemed to be shocked by Aizen's decision. "Aizen-sama, do you think it is hell? However, it is said that those places are where the guilty are, and ordinary Shinigami cannot enter at all, and they do not follow the rules at all. The place of law." Aizen put away the Hōgyoku in his hand and said, "Hell is independent of the place outside the 3 realms. It has its own rules of operation, punishes sinful souls, and also maintains the balance of the 3 realms. It is indeed the world of the guilty. But, yes, the so-called laws are prepared for those who cannot survive without following the laws. Since the world does not exist without relying on the laws, then just stay above the world and defeat all the laws. As long as I, Hōgyoku, am completely stable and integrated, and I completely bid farewell to inferior existences like Shinigami, then there will be no opponents in front of me, and the same will be true for the laws of all worlds." Aizen turned around and re-instructed the current direction, saying, "Yin, you want, but now, first go to the present world." "This world?" Ichimaru Jin looked very confused and said, "Captain Aizen, I feel like there is nothing interesting in this world that can arouse your interest." Tosen Kanami said dissatisfiedly, "Ichimaru, be quiet." Aizen smiled softly. "Isn't there anything interesting in this world? Silver, have you forgotten that there are still a bunch of humans with the power of the Soul King's fragments in this world? That's the so-called Fullbringers. I'm very curious about what surprises their power will bring to me. Let's go, Yin, to see the so-called final power of the fragment." Aizen stepped forward. Ichimaru Jin and Tosen Kanori inserted the Zanpakuto into the void at the same time. Untie the ingot. A ripple appeared in the air and then an ancient screen door suddenly appeared. When Aizen Sosuke stepped into the realm gate, he took off the glasses he had been wearing on his face as he walked, and then crushed them into powder. With his right hand stretched back on his head, Aizen's originally slightly messy bangs instantly transformed into a very handsome slicked-back hairstyle, with a strand of long hair hanging elegantly in front of his forehead. This simple action changed Aizen's whole temperament drastically. The last moment he was the gentle captain known to everyone in the Soul Society, and now he has transformed into a king with crazy ambitions. The next step is the absolute path. Chapter 83 The Kingdom Lurking in the Shadows. Back to Hueco Mundo. Tojo Ayaya was soaked in the pouring rain and looked at the devastated Soul Society and said, "Everything is over. Soul Society has been defeated. The Gotei 13 were completely defeated by me and the Arrancar Legion. All the current members of Room 46 and the Tsunayashiro clan no longer exist. Their existence in the 3 realms has been erased. Now in Soul Society, Although a small number of captains are still fighting against Espada, the rest of the officers and team members are no match for Arrancar, the subordinate of Tojo, and are completely in the stage of losing ground. Under the leadership of Tachi, Daxu gradually filled every street and every house in Seraiti. As for the nobles, they were still determined to resist at first. However, these ordinary noble Shinigami, who are accustomed to the luxurious life of Seraiti, neither have the courage to sacrifice their lives nor have absolute strength. In addition, no captain level could spare manpower to help these nobles, so they were all captured by Arrancar. After Arrancar killed some of the rebellious Shinigami nobles, the remaining nobles were completely stunned. Things that mattered to their lives were no joke. Of course they bent their usually proud knees and surrendered to the Arrancar Legion to beg for their lives. When the Seraiti occupation was in full swing, the 13th team was about to be completely destroyed and the Seraiti was completely invaded. Daocheng also received feedback from the system at this time. Congratulations to host for unlocking the achievement, Storm of the Seraiti, and receiving special rewards, the key to unlocking the Soul King's eyes and entering the Invisible Empire. Tojo Ayaya looked at this reward and was very confused. He had obviously obtained the Eye of the Soul King 100 years ago, so why would he be given a reminder to unblock it now? However, the key to the Invisible Empire is easy to understand, that is, through this key, Tojo Ayaya can enter and exit this kingdom hidden in the shadow at will. The Invisible Empire is a kingdom belonging to the Quincy Inn, Shinigami. Its stronghold is the Ice Palace hidden in the shadow of the Seraiti building. Quote exclamation mark exclamation mark exclamation mark exclamation mark exclamation mark quote. Suddenly, there was a sharp pain in Tushiro's eyes, and a powerful force suddenly poured into Tojo Ayaya's eyes, which seemed to carry a very huge power of division and creation. This trace of power suddenly burst out in Daocheng's eyes, just like a huge world-class explosion suddenly exploded in Daocheng's eyes. Daocheng recovered from the severe pain and felt the difference in his eyes carefully. Could it be that the power of the eyes of the Soul King is not only omniscience, seeing through the past and future of the three realms? This force seems to have the ability to force separation and extreme mergers. This ability can almost extend to the world. It is the power to integrate the three realms. From this point of view, the power of the Spirit King is simply unfathomable. Daocheng felt the deep instability of the power of his eyes. He could feel that this power was very powerful, but at the same time it was also full of danger and uncertainty. After receiving such a huge power at once, Daocheng felt that it was difficult to completely control it. Although Daocheng knew that he had the strongest numerical panel in the three worlds at the moment, he still needed time to adapt and master this new power. At this moment, Tojo Ayaya has made a decision in her heart. If she continues to stay in Soul Society, it will pose a threat to the Soul King Palace. If the Zero Squadron considers the Soul King Palace, now this power suddenly appears in her eyes. There may even be a risk of going berserk in response to a challenge. Considering these factors, Daocheng felt that it would be wiser to retreat to Hueco Mundo for the time being. There can provide him with enough conditions and environment to become familiar with and stabilize this force, and also to put an end to the Invisible Empire and Yuacha's affairs. Advertisement. As long as Daocheng completely stabilizes the power of his eyes and makes it a part of himself, when he fully controls this power, he will make a comeback again. So, let's give Shinigami a break for now. This battle of Seraiti is just the beginning of Sword City's counterattack. Daocheng will use this time to improve its strength, wait for the time to come, and look forward to giving them a fatal blow again. With a thought in Tushiro's mind, he sent a message to all the Arrancars in the Seraiti. The situation has changed. Now the entire Arrancar army has retreated to Hueco Mundo. Balagang, Haribel, and a series of Arrancars all couldn't believe it. Master Toshiro would actually give up Soul Society, which was about to be completely occupied by them, and instead chose to give up everything and return to Hueco Mundo. Even Stark, who had been paddling with the Shinigami team, couldn't help but scratch his head and said helplessly, I really have an unreliable boss. Although all the Arrancars under Sword City did not understand Sword City's decision, they still chose to comply. Balagang looked at Toshiro, who was beaten all over with bruises, and snorted with disdain. That guy from Daocheng, when I was having fun, he asked someone to go back, what a bummer. After all, Balagang obeyed Tojo Ayaya's order and stretched out his index finger to tap on the void. Black ripples immediately appeared in the air, and then the ripples turned into cracks. Then the cracks became bigger and bigger, and finally the spiritual pressure completely opened the space, forming a special portal for one person to pass through. When Balagang turned around and was about to walk in, Toshiro behind him forced himself on his body and asked loudly, are you trying to escape? Escape. Balagang squinted at Toshiro and said, but, I remember that because of my retreat, it was you who temporarily saved one life. Shinigami. Toshiro said angrily, stop joking. You have made Soul Society like this, neither killing us nor completely occupying the Seraiti, and just going back without saying anything. You are looking down on me. Is Gotei determined? Balagang dug his ears and said angrily, Shinigami. I am already kind. Who do you think you are talking to? You are talking to me who can play with time and control aging. Komamura's left formation punched the ground hard with his fists and looked at Haribel, who walked into the black cavity. At the same time, the opening of the black cavity gradually closed, and Komamura's left formation could no longer catch up. He shouted, Shu, come out. The despicable people who suddenly attacked the Seraiti. Haribel looked at Komamura's roar from the left and said calmly, the sacrifices brought to the Seraiti have been too many. If you pursue sacrifice, you will have to pay the price of sacrifice. Presumably Lord Toyoro gave up for this reason. I've knocked your horse off, so I'll kick it down with gratitude. As Haribel's words ended, the gap in the black cavity suddenly closed, the black filaments dissipated in the air again, and the space returned to normal. The numerous Arankars and Daxu who were all over the Seraiti just now, all withdrew from Hueco Mundo under the orders of Tojo. Only the dilapidated buildings, remaining flames, and the pouring rain silently told the past of this war. Chapter 84 After the War. The devastated Seraiti. A new captain meeting. During the battle, near the 4th Division team building. The second group, Shift 12, rotates to Shift 13 and goes to West 56th District. All the remaining team members follow me. Put the bodies at the end and quickly transport the wounded to the 4th Division for treatment. Hurry. If there are emergency casualties, go and take them to an emergency treatment facility. A large number of wounded were found in the East 12th District. Urgent call for Shinigami support. Urgent call for Shinigami support. 4th Division team building, 2nd floor. Kotetsu Yun looked at Captain Unohana standing in front of the window, at the busy squad members walking in and out, and at the wounded roaring in pain, and said uneasily, Captain Unohana, we really do you want to continue to stay in the 4th Division dormitory and do nothing? If we go out, maybe we can save more people. Ujawa said quietly. Yongyan, as the deputy captain of the medical rescue team, you can't talk nonsense emotionally. Driven by uneasiness, you really want to leave here. But now I still need to explain to you why not you can leave here, you shouldn't be so superficial. Kotetsu Yongyan shed tears and choked back the pain. Yes, I'm sorry, Captain Unohana. No matter what happens, we cannot leave the 4th Squadron building. This is the last order given to us by the captain. We must hold on here firmly. After Tojo led the Arankar Legion to withdraw from Soul Society was filled with first aid orders and wounded people wailing, and all Shinigami looked anxious and cold. For many days in a row, even though the heavy rain had ended and the sunny weather returned, the entire Seraiti was still shrouded in a lifeless atmosphere. In the 8th Division team building, Hiroku Shunsui was still wrapped in bandages. He wore a single blindfold because his right eye was blinded by Ulquiorra. At this moment, Hiroku Shunsui was sitting in the team building as usual, holding a long scroll document in his hand and sighed. Tong, eyes Nanao knocked on the door of Hiroku Shunsui's room. Hiroku Shunsui still looked at the scroll in his hand without saying a word. Captain, excuse me, eyes Nanora gate of opening, said, I'm coming in, Captain. Looking at Hiroku sitting in front of the window, basking in the sun and looking at the documents in his hands, Nanao said, Captain. Since you are here, please agree to it, okay. Hiroku Shunsui did not answer Nanao's words, but said as if talking to himself, Nanao-chan, maybe we have to separate. Eyes Nanao. Upon seeing this, Jinraku Shunsui showed the document in his hand. Hiroku Jiro Sozozo Shunsui. I appoint this person to be the captain of the Gotei 13 and concurrently the captain of the 1st Division. Open black lens bracket central 46 close black lens bracket. Nanao looked at the resignation document and said in confusion, but a few days ago, Tojo led an army to attack the Seraiti, and there was a violent explosion in the 46th room. Isn't it confirmed that none of the members survived? Why? It will be successfully established again soon and new orders will be issued. Advertisement. Jinraku Shunsui sighed and said, this is its magic. The war inside Seraiti has been in tatters after Hueco Mundo's sudden war, and the interior of each division is even more chaotic. Unexpectedly, the one that was re-established in an orderly manner after the war turned out to be Central 46, which is really funny. Nanao said. Then Captain, do you want to? Hiroku Shunsui stood up, shook off his body, and said, yes, first of all, let's call everyone together and hold a captain meeting. Soul Society has lost too much this time. First team building, captain's conference room, where the captain held a meeting a few days ago. Unexpectedly, things changed and people changed. In just a few days, the old man who was originally here was no longer there. Because some captains of the Gotei 13 were absent for various reasons, some squads were replaced by deputy captains in the meeting. Everyone looked at the broken Ryujin Jaka placed in front of the stage, and everyone present felt quite uncomfortable. Hitsugaya Toshiro was the first to speak. The entire team in our squad is looking for the captain's body, but nothing is found. It seems to have been destroyed by the enemy. At this time, a man dressed in black came in and reported. Zaraki Kenpachi, the captain of the 11th Division, saved his life but has completely lost his combat ability. Jashiro Yukitaki, the captain of the 13th Division, died. Ichimaru Jin, the captain of the 3rd Division, and Ichimaru Jin, the 5th Division captain. Team Captain Aizen Sosuke and Team 9 Captain Tosen Konami are missing, and there is no trace of them in Soul Society. Sui Feng lost control of his emotions at this moment and shouted, back off. The captain is dead now. Don't you understand? Reporting Shinigami was suddenly scolded by the captain of the 2nd Division, and he was suddenly shocked. Stop it, Sui Feng. Do you think you're the only one who wants to roar? The death of Lord Yamamoto Genryu Sai and the disappearance of Tosen. In addition to the grief and indignation of the captain's death, Komamura's left formation heard that Tosen Konami was missing. If he and Tosen had been friends for many years, they would naturally be anxious when they heard that the other party was missing, and asked, Tosen is missing. And there is something else. Lord Genryujai, the abominable bandit army. At this time, Nirvana had just appeared and said, there is no need to worry about the disappearance of the 3 captains of the 3rd Division, Ichimaru Jin, the 5th Division Captain, Aizen Sosuke, and the 9th Division Captain, Tosen Konami. According to the Technology Development Bureau these days, the strange spatial fluctuations detected indicate that 3 people from the Soul Society once left the Seraiti and came to the present world. Komamura left the formation and said, what did you say? You mean that Dong Xian passed away to the present world? Nirvana said, that's it. But the motives of these 3 captains coming and going to the present world are a mystery. It's just that I just learned about their motives for defecting to the present world. Komamura left the formation and said angrily, Captain Ni, do you know what you are talking about? You are insulting the justice of my best friend Tosen. I definitely didn't mean to insult Captain Tosen, but the equipment in the Technology Development Bureau detected that when Captain Jashiro died, Aizen, Ichimaru and your best friend Tosen gathered around Captain Jashiro. Niori explained. The so-called Technology Development Bureau, after debugging, can sense the different spiritual pressure compositions of Shinigami, Arankar, and humans, so as to determine the location. But when Captain Jashiro died, there were only Aizen and the other 3 around him, but there was no Arankar. Quote. Komamura left the formation and said, you mean? That's it, Captain Komamura. Niori said the result, the one who killed Captain Jashiro was not the Arankar under Ayaya Tojo, but the 3 of Aizen. At this time, the 3 of Aizen had defected to now, the instrument has not detected any trace of the 3 people since then. Niori pointed behind her and said, even if you still don't believe it, there is a real witness outside the door. She witnessed with her own eyes the scene of Aizen Sosuke attacking Captain Jashiro. Nirvana clapped her hands gently and said outside, Kuchiki, you can come in. Next, I would like to trouble you to tell the story clearly to the captains and vice-captains. Chapter 85A Turbulent Period. The arrival of Team Zero. After Kuchiki walked in, she bowed to the captains and the participants. Even because of the sudden attack in Soul Society and the death of Captain Jashiro, she still retained basic etiquette. All the captains were as usual, except Byakuya who looked a little uncomfortable when he saw Rukia's arrival. Kuchiki tried her best to calm down her mood and said, this is the fact. Captain Aizen of the 5th Division took advantage of Captain Jashiro's unprepared moment and stabbed the captain through the chest with his Zanpakuto. Then he teamed up with the other 2 captain, completely kill all the members of the 13th Division except me who are staying with Captain Jashiro. Before Lucia finished speaking, Hinamori Momo at the foot of the stairs couldn't hold on anymore. Hinamori Momo is petite and has big brown eyes. Although she has a seemingly weak and cute appearance, at this moment her face will have a serious and scary face. His hair was tied up in a bun, and he was wearing a standard Death Overlord outfit, which was covered with bandages from injuries. He still wore the badge of the 5th Division Vice Captain on his left shoulder. Hinamori Momo said, Kuchiki Rukia. Captain Aizen, when did he offend you? Why did you make up such words to slander Captain Aizen? Rukia looked at Hinamori Momo and said, Vice Captain Hinamori, I know you can't accept that your captain would do such a thing, but unfortunately, this is the fact. Although Hinamori was injured all over, when she mentioned Aizen, she seemed to be touched and couldn't sit still. Jingraku Shunsui said in a deep voice, that's enough, Hinamori. I know you trust your own captain very much, but too much trust will be exploited by others. It's because you were betrayed by someone you trusted that you became so rude. Now, Mr. Sean is dead and I will take over as the captain. I don't want to see the team falling apart like this. Hinamori looked at Kyoraku Shunsui and Hitsugaya Toshiro with tears, and said, Captain Kyoraku, Haku, and Captain Aizen must have some difficulties, maybe Tosen and Ichimaru. In the middle of Hinamori's words, Kyoraku glanced sideways and saw that both Komamura and Toshiro were about to explode. Only Shunpo appeared behind Hinamori and put one hand on the back of Hinamori's head to activate his spiritual pressure. When Hinamori came into contact with Kyoraku's spring water Reiatsu, Kyoraku used the Reiatsu combined with a certain Kidō technique to cause Hinamori Momo to undergo hypnosis in advance. Kyoraku Shunsui said to the accompanying Shinigami from Division 5, having just experienced the war, Vice Captain Hinamori is a little exhausted. It's better to help her go back and have a good rest. The members of the 5th Division lifted Hinamori Momo who had fainted and helped her leave the conference room. At this moment, Hitsugaya Toshiro has seen Hinamori Momo's behavior of protecting Aizen so much, and he can't help but feel unhappy and resentful towards Aizen. Kyoraku Shunsui said in a low voice, the current situation is really not optimistic. Former Captain Yamamoto died in the battle, and Deputy Captain Sasaki did not survive. 3 other captains defected, and Jashiro was also killed by Aizen in a sneak attack. Captain Zaraki is still there. He is seriously injured and is still receiving treatment. Now there are only 7 captains left in the Gotei 13 who can barely form a fighting force, and most of them are injured. If at this time, Toshiro Ayaya leads Arankar to attack again, plus I am waiting for Bankai if it cannot be used, the Gotei 13 will enter a state of complete collapse sooner or later. Jingraku Shunsui stretched out his hand to touch the bamboo hat on his head, with helplessness in his eyes, and said, I really became the captain in an extraordinary period. Advertisement. Quote question mark question mark question mark quote. At this time, a messenger Shinigami came in from the side door and respectfully handed something like a small scroll to Kyoraku. Hiroku Shunsui opened the scroll curiously. Jinraku read the content on the scroll for a while and said, "That's it, I understand. We will get there soon." Sui Feng looked at Jingle's solemn look and asked, "What's wrong?" Jinraku Shunsui lowered his hat and said, "It's better to see this situation now, although it is very troublesome. The big shot of the Zero Division is coming today. ... Millions of years ago, the ancestor of the 5 great nobles sealed the Soul King in the crystal of the Soul King Palace, and used his power to divide the primitive chaotic world into 3 realms: Soul Society, Hueco Mundo and the real world. The Zero Division is the King's special agent. Its main responsibility is to protect the Soul King Palace and the Soul King. It consists of 5 members, all 5 of whom are captains, of which Hayasu Aikibe is the leader. The Zero Division's strength is superior to that of the entire Gotei 13, and they will never show up easily until a critical moment. Each member has created something of great significance to Soul Society and holds a pivotal position. Hayasu Ippei obeyed the will of the ancestor of the 5 nobles and guarded the Spirit King conscientiously to maintain the balance of the 3 realms. After that, Nigeo, who created the Zanpakuto, became a member of the Zero Division, and Kirinji Tenshiro and Shutara Senjumaru were later promoted to members of the Zero Division. Karibune Hakafuna was promoted from the 12th Division of the Gotei 13 to the Zero Division more than 100 years ago, and was the last member to be promoted to the Zero Division. On the green field, all available captains gathered around. Jinraku Shunsui looked at the flash of light in the sky and said to the captains behind him, "Look, they are coming." The clouds in the sky were pierced by a huge pillar, and this huge pillar hit the open space in front of the captain of the Gotei 13th team at an extremely fast speed. The smoke and dust stirred up by the powerful downward thrust obscured the surrounding scene. After a while, the smoke and dust gradually receded. Hiroku looked at the white pillar with orange hoops at both ends in front of him and said, "Is this the Tianju chariot? The special vehicle used by the Zero Squadron to travel between Soul King Palace and Soul Society." The door in the pillar slowly opened outwards, and 5 people walked out, but they appeared in a way that looked extremely improper. The fat purple-haired lady on the far right, Hakafuna Kiryu, is smiling like a theatergoer. Kirinji Tenshiro, who has a thin face and a hook-shaped hair, is waving a flag in his hand. He has a beautiful appearance, pale complexion, and 6 skulls. The elegant woman Shutara Senjumaru plays an instrument with the arms behind her back. The dark-skinned Wang Yu swings her hands and performs an exaggerated dance. Standing in the middle is Hayasu Aikibe. He is tall and strong, with a bald head, thick eyebrows and a chest-length beard. Tenshiro of Kirinji Temple held a straw in his mouth and sang in rhyme mode, "Here he comes. Here he comes." The Zero Squadron makes its grand debut. Long time no see, chicks of the Gotei 13 Squadron. Chapter 86. Who is Kurosaki Ichigo? Enter the Invisible Empire. Kirinji Tenshiro greeted the captains of the Gotei 13 with extremely exaggerated tones and movements, and at first glance, the other Zero divisions also looked out of place. Toshiro complained in a low voice, "As this Team Zero? It's completely different from what I imagined." "Ha!" The fat lady slapped Toshiro hard on the back, raised her hand and said, "Kids, don't underestimate the Zero division so easily." "Ha, ha, ha." Toshiro, who almost fell to the ground first, looked at the malicious ant who was sneak attack from behind, and several black lines appeared on his face. Here Temple Tenshiro had already found an acquaintance, Captain Unohana, and he used an exaggerated airplane head to rotate, and the fixed airplane hairstyle was attached to Unohana's hair like a guillotine. "Long time no see, Unohana. How are you? Are you using the healing technique I taught you well?" Unohana Retsu closed his eyes and replied, "Of course." Tenshiro of Kirinji Temple raised his head and continued, "Is this true? However, it seems that many people died in Seraiti this time. What happened?" Maojihua opened her eyes lightly and looked towards Kilin Temple. "Wow." Before Unohana Retsu could reply, the bald Hayasu Aikibe had put a hand on Kirinji's shoulder and said, "After all, we are reunited after a long separation. We need to chat later. Hey, everyone in the Zero Squadron is still the same, monk." Hiroku Shunsui lifted up his bamboo hat slightly, exposed his only remaining left eye, and asked calmly, "Then, why are you here this time?" Hayasu pondered for a moment. "Well, I'm here this time. It's on the orders of the Soul King to reorganize the Gotei 13th team. And the Soul King named me to find a person in this world. Man, and take him to the spiritual palace." "Are you kidding?" Sui Feng scolded in the audience. "I don't know how great Team Zero is, but when the Seraiti was destroyed by Sword City Ayaya, you hid there and refused to come out. Wait until the destruction after that." He jumped out and said that he wanted to reorganize the Gotei 13. "Don't give me any nonsense." The monk didn't seem to hear Sui Feng's scolding, and then said, "Next." "Hello." A Shunpo from Kilin Temple appeared directly behind Sui Feng. Sui Feng was unable to react to Kilin Temple's teleportation action. He simply reached out and restrained Sui Feng. Kilin Temple said, "It's so noisy." Sui Feng. "What kind of speed and movement is this?" Kirinji said with a dark face. "That's what we're saying. Are you kidding me? What do you do? Aren't you the Gotei 13? Our job is to protect the Soul Palace, and your job is to protect Hero. Lingting. 2 captains died, 3 captains defected. They were unable to protect the Seraiti even though they had the name of the Gotei, and they came to complain that we didn't come to help. The word, Gotei, makes me cry." When Kirinji caught Sui Feng and gave him a pretentious scolding, Hayasu Aikibe appeared behind him and punched him on the head with, boom. Qilin Temple suddenly received a blow from the monk's head. He suddenly became dizzy and fell to the ground. Advertisement. Hyasube Ikibe crossed his arms and said, I've said it all, we'll talk later if we have anything to say, let's get things done first. At this time, Hiraku Shunsui stepped forward and questioned what Hyasube said before. So, monk. The Soul King has issued a decree for you to go to the present world and bring someone to the Soul King Palace. Although this decision surprised me, then, who is this person? Hyasube Ichigo glanced at Kiraku, narrowed his eyes and said, Kurosaki Ichigo. Seeing the captains looking at each other, it was obvious that none of them had heard of this name. Hyasube scratched his head and said, then let's change the name. He is the son of Shiba Isshin, the captain of the 10th Division 20 years ago. The Spirit King is looking for him this time because he has something important to discuss. Zuquan, Zai Palace. Daocheng sat on the throne and stood up slowly. The extra power in his eyes was completely controlled by him. The ability of the Spirit King's eye is not only omniscience, but also the ability to see through the past and future of the three realms. It also contains the power to create or destroy the world. The Spirit King officially opened up the three realms through this power. I see, it's very interesting. Daocheng extracted the key to the invisible empire that was previously rewarded from the system, and a seemingly ordinary key instantly appeared in Daocheng's hand. HMPH, Daocheng slowly inserted the unattractive key into the void, and ripples appeared in the air of the throne like water. Sword City slowly turned the key in the void. Although the key was in the void, it still made a quang, quang sound as the Sword City turned. After a sound of mechanical twisting, the ripples in the void gradually began to rotate clockwise. As the cracks in the space became larger and larger, a portal was revealed. When Toshiro saw the portal revealed, he let out a chuckle and stepped into the space door. As Tojo Ayaya entered, the space behind him slowly closed and the key returned to his hand. There is a huge ice palace in front, and two large horn-shaped buildings are erected in front of the palace gate, forming an appearance of opposing each other. Daocheng looked at the snow-white building in front of him and said, Invisible Empire, here I come. Then, you watch, are you ready to welcome the guests? Tower, 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 the sound of Daocheng walking came out in the narrow palace passage, and there was silence all around. Until Daocheng passed through the long corridor, his eyes suddenly became clear. A huge hall like an ice sculpture appeared in front of him. Yuwatch sat on a high chair in front of him with a casual attitude, leaning forward to examine the arrival of the City of Swords. In front of him stood 2 rows of members of the Knights of the Star Cross, and behind the knights were countless holy soldiers in white. Yuwatch has 3 silver medals on each collar and wears a crimson cloak. He has long black hair and a beard, and has a deep and fierce face and eyes. After Yuhabak sensed the arrival of Daocheng, he opened his sleepy eyes and said to Daocheng with an unusual meaning, It really surprises me, Daocheng Ayaya, in this 1,000 years, you are the first one. Someone who used his own strength to force his way into this place. Daocheng smiled softly, looked directly at Yuwatch and said, I am also very surprised that the King of Quincy, who was supposed to be dead 1,000 years ago, is actually hiding in this dark shadow and surviving. 200 years ago, those Quincy outside Master K is almost in tears. The 200-year-old guy is the cornerstone of peace and the ladder of the 3 realms. Yuwatch changed the topic and said, Tojo Ayaya, everything you did in the Seraiti before, I will see through it. Shadow has seen it. You also want to destroy Soul Society, it seems that our purpose is the same. Daocheng lowered his voice after hearing this and said, Are the goals the same? Chapter 87 The Eyes of the Soul King. The brutally tortured Yuwatch. Daocheng watched Yuwatch extend an olive branch to him, and smiled in amusement, but this gesture of expressing disdain was instantly noticed by Yuwatch. What's wrong? What are you laughing at? Yuhabak looked at Daocheng and changed his tone to a more fierce tone. Daocheng looked directly at Yuwatch and said, Are you the king of the Quincy, Yuwatch? As the king of the Quincy, do you actually invite people who break into your palace to become your subordinates? Yuwatch said, I saw the war you launched in the Seraiti clearly through the shadow. You also wanted to destroy Soul Society, and our goals are the same. The corners of Daocheng's lips raised. Are the goals the same? It's interesting. Hug together in front of a common goal to keep warm. Isn't that what losers do? Yuwatch stood up from the throne and said, So, your choice is. I refuse. Tojo Ayaya said sonorously, as the king of Quincy, I can't bear to watch this scene surrounded by a Shinigami. Does that mean rejection? Yohabak stood up from the throne, and the seat behind him instantly turned into a spirit and dissipated in the air. A blue spirit child rose from Yuwatch's hand, and he said, I saw your battle in the Seraiti. To be honest, it is really troublesome to deal with you, but since you have entered the Quincy Kingdom by yourself, I have to choose to get rid of you, then don't blame others. The moment Yuwatch announced the battle, several Quincy suddenly jumped out from behind Sword Castle, shouting crazily at Sword Castle Ayaya, trying to take action first. There is no need for your majesty to take action. We can deal with such a guy. Die. Tojo Ayaya, right now you can't imagine that there will be an attack later. Seeing this, Toshiro didn't even look at the Quincy who rushed towards him. He instantly burst out with spiritual pressure. A huge pillar of spiritual pressure rose into the sky and broke through the top of Yuwatch's ice palace. The moment the Sword City's spiritual pressure exploded, it turned into a huge shock wave, immediately seriously injuring those Quincy who were overestimating their capabilities. Yuwatch looked at these members of the Star-Crossed Knights, Stern Ritter, who were seriously injured by the Sword City's spiritual pressure. Not only did he not care, but he also swore angrily. A bunch of idiots, they will end up like this if they interfere in my war. End. The spiritual pressure pillar that broke through the sky dissipated and turned into a rain of spiritual pressure that fell throughout the palace. Yuwatch took a deep breath, felt Tojo's spiritual pressure and said, facing you directly from the front, it feels a lot stronger than during the Seraiti battle. Tojo Ayaya. Daocheng turned his head and looked at Yhwach coldly, and Yhwach said, what's wrong? What are you trying to express with this look? Tojo Ayaya Yoruichi paused and said with extremely clear words, Yhwach, do you think you won't look like you just now in front of me? Brush, Yuwatch has already extracted atmospheric spirit seeds from his hands, condensed them into two spirit lightsabers, and slashed toward the Sword City in a crisscross shape. Dang. Tojo pulled out his Zanpakuto from his waist and resisted Yuwatch's double knife slash. Toshiro Ayaya slowly opened her new eyes and said calmly, I have seen them all. Yuwatch. Daocheng's eyes are divided into 4 pupils, and the whites in the middle form a diamond shape, with weird squirming pupils. In these eyes, it seems that there is nothing in this world that it cannot see through, and this is indeed the case. Advertisement. Those eyes are. Yhwach was shocked for the first time at this moment. Daocheng said calmly, Yhwach, what is reflected in my eyes at this moment is your miserable death. Boom. Violent blue bursts of spiritual pressure erupted from the soles of Yuwatch's feet, turning into a ball of blue light and rushing towards the Sword City at an extremely fast speed. The spirit light sword in his hand then struck hard. Slash. I saw it. Daocheng turned a blind eye to this massive slash. The next moment, when Yhwach came to his senses, Daocheng had already appeared behind him. Quote exclamation mark quote. Yuwatch stared hard at Tojo Ayaya's strange eyes with 4 pupils, and said, these eyes. How did you get them? This power belongs to the Soul King. Daocheng spread his hands and said, you said this, it should be a destiny. Or is it destiny? But, Yuwatch, what does it mean to have these eyes? You should know it, right? Quote. This is a symbol that is destined to reshape the 3 realms. Damn it. Yhwach turned around and slashed at the Sword City with the spirit sword again, and said angrily, don't think that you can see everything clearly because you have this eye, the 3 realms. At the moment when Yhwach struck, Daocheng had already appeared behind him, and said coldly, I said, I have seen everything clearly. Boom. Touchy has already firmly grasped Yuwatch's face with one hand, and the spiritual pressure in his palm exploded. A powerful spiritual pressure palm strike instantly hit Yuwatch high into the sky. Yuwatch, who was shot high in the sky, was affected by the impact. Just as he was about to adjust his posture, Tojo Ayaya appeared in front of him like a ghost. Great holy bow. Yhwach saw the sudden appearance of Sword City. He used his own spiritual power to summon a huge spiritual bow with multiple arrows shaped like giant spears in midair, and aimed at launch an attack in the direction of Daocheng. Quang, Quang, Toshiro simply swung his Zanpakuto and shattered the oncoming giant spirit arrows into pieces of spirit particles that were scattered in the wind. Soon Tojo Ayaya Yoruichi and Shunko directly caught up with Yuwatch. The rotating Zanpakuto slashed towards Yuwatch with absolute power. Dang. Daocheng's Zanpakuto and Yuwatch's sword made a crisp collision sound. Touchy looked at the Quincy King in front of him who was desperately resisting his attack with the Reiko sword, and chuckled. Yuwatch, you don't look any different from those subordinates you dislike. The Sword City exploded with spiritual pressure. With a strong force, a huge spiritual pressure suddenly appeared on the Zanpakuto. The huge spiritual pressure flow turned into an absolute slashing blow, knocking Yuwatch down to the ground with both his body and the sword. Yuwatch was hit head-on by Tojo Castle's slash. Following the collapse of Tojo Castle's spiritual pressure, he turned into a meteor and fell straight to the ground, forming a huge crater. The aftermath of Tojo Castle Ayaya's huge power shattered the ice. Half of the palace was shattered into pieces in an instant. Yuwatch crawled out of the hole and gasped angrily, Tojo Ayaya. Damn it, do you think this can defeat me? I haven't showed my true power yet. Yuwatch raised his right hand, and the dark blue spiritual pressure vortex was once again entrenched in his right hand. From the outside, it seemed as if it was swallowing and absorbing everything from the inside. Hold it high. Silver coat of arms, gray grassland. Chapter 88 Breaking 2 with one sword. The power of Tojo Ayaya's Zanpakuto. Daocheng watched Yuwatch begin to chant a strange spell, and the spiritual pressure vortex in his hand became stronger and stronger. He frowned and said, Holy. That means recycling the Quincy you deem unnecessary. The power of. Daocheng said. The past experience has been projected in my eyes. 6 years ago, after being sealed, you spent 999 years, that is, using this ability to seize the power of all the mixed blood Quincy. You can use it to regain your lost heartbeat, consciousness and strength, right? Sanctification. Yuwatch can use this ability to absorb the power of Quincy members he considers unnecessary and return it to himself. He can also use this to resurrect dead Quincy members and regain the power of the Quincy members. Power is distributed among the remaining Quincy. When one's own power is restricted by an opponent, one can even use this to restore the power that was deprived or sealed. However, the Quincy whose power is taken away by Yuwatch using this ability will die immediately. But, Yuwatch, you have forgotten one thing. At this moment, I am standing in front of you. Tojo said calmly, and then Shikai opened his Zanpakuto that had been lost for 300 years, deny the world. Qian Destiny. You watch. When he squatted down and chanted in an attempt to kill some Quincy soldiers, Tojo Ayaya instantly shikade his Zanpakuto, and suddenly disappeared from his sight the next moment. Brush. You watch lowered his head and saw a Zanpakuto piercing his chest from behind, and the sacred chant was also directly interrupted at the moment when the Seidojo Zanpakuto penetrated. As this, the Holy Spirit was interrupted. No, he was the one who temporarily severed the connection between my Quincy bloodline. What greeted Yuwatch was still the strange eyes with 4 agate-colored pupils. Daocheng said coldly. I said, in my eyes, there is nothing else reflected, just your miserable death, Yuwatch. While Daocheng was speaking, he kicked Yuhabak hard. Yuwatch saw the force of Tushiro's whip kick and punched out with his left hand just as he was about to block the attack. In an instant, he found that his left hand was suddenly out of control. Toshiro Ayaya's heavy blow had already kicked myself in the face. Yuwatch was kicked in the face by Tojo Ayaya Yoruichi, and he broke through the wall and was kicked out of the ice palace. Yuwatch turned over, used his hands and feet together, and the spiritual pressure continued to explode. The strong recoil forced Yuwatch as the figure slowly stopped. Yohabak finally stood firm and found Tojo Ayaya. Yoruichi jumped and landed in front of him. Yuwatch almost lost control and said, Tojo Ayaya. How is it possible? How can you have such terrifying power? This is simply impossible. Daocheng looked at Yuwatch, who was sitting like a monarch just a moment ago, showing his defense-breaking appearance, and smiled. How can there be such a terrifying power? However, I remember that I have never shown my true power before. What is it? What makes you conclude that my power is only at this level? Tojo Ayaya smiled and said, Yuhaba, but I know your power. Through these eyes, I can even clearly see the conversation you had with Hyasube Ikibe 8,000 years ago. I know everything about you. Even the ability sealed by Hyasube. Almighty was originally considered to be the power to know all the future, which means that the skills you know cannot harm it. After activating the ability, multiple pupils will appear in the eyes. Quote. Advertisement. If the eyes that were sealed for 999 years are opened before the end of the 9 years when the power is finally recovered, the power will be out of control and the power of all members of the Knights of the Star Cross will be taken away. Therefore, the only way is to fully recover the power. Only when you have strength can you open your eyes. Yuwatch said in shock. You. Why? Toshiro Ayaya said. Are you shocked as to why I know everything? Everything in the 3 realms is clearly recorded by my eyes and the power of the Spirit King. Daocheng then destroyed Yuwatch's psychological defense line and said. That is, the moment you open your eyes, is the moment when you can fully display your strength. But the King of Quincy who has been sealed for 999 years, it must be very painful, right? In the last 9 years, when you were about to regain your power, I interrupted you. My Zanpakuto, Senjin Kurikara. The essence of its ability can be regarded as the reference point of the 3 realms that returns all abnormalities to their original positions. It is the power of negation that can be called the 3 realms. It repairs, restores, and cherishes this world. Wish. Yuwatch said in confusion. Correction of the world. Your Zanpakuto ability. Tojo threw the Zanpakuto in a circle and said, the Soul King's ultimate power can distort the world at will, but it will be extremely difficult to return to the original world. But if there are things that affect the 3 realms, even if the world is distorted, it can negate everything and keep it as it is. All phenomena and even the bloodline linked to destiny will be completely denied and eliminated. From another perspective, the karma of thousands of connections can also be seen as a backup for the correction of the world. Does Shinigami also want to deny the King of Quincy? Tojo Ayaya, I'll tell you again. I will see everything. Asterisk 2. Yuhabak saw that Ayaya Tojo had finished speaking before him. Tojo slowly approached Yuhabak and said, I said from the beginning that I can see everything in the 3 realms. Yuwatch, my eyes can see the future further than yours. Not to mention, your eyes were sealed by Hyasube Ikibe using the power of advance, as early as 1,000 years ago. You see the future we arrived has already been cut off by others. Brush. Touchy held the Zanpakuto, and the blade cleanly broke through the defense of Yuwatch's blood suit, and passed directly past the vital part of Yuwatch's neck. When Yuwatch saw the Zanpakuto slicing across his body, he said in disbelief, isn't possible. Crack. At the moment when Tojo's Zanpakuto slashed through, and in the disbelief of the Quincy King's eyes, Yuwatch's head and body were directly separated, and he still had the expression of doubt in his life. He dropped physically. Tojo Ayaya put her Zanpakuto back into its scabbard and looked at Yuwatch with a look of disbelief and a hint of confusion. Yuwatch, your world has been completely shattered by me, poor Quincy King. Chapter 89 M&X. Seeing Yuwatch's confused head at the last moment of his death, Daocheng couldn't help but sigh. Your Majesty actually lost. Can it be said that the strength of this Shinigami has surpassed His Majesty, so what kind of future is waiting for us? Moreover, because Tochiyu and Yuha fought so fast, many Quincy were unable to react due to the violent collision of spiritual pressure in several moments. The moment Yuwatch failed, his violent spiritual pressure that was hovering in the palace suddenly dissipated. At the moment Yuwatch died, a fear spread among the Knights of the Star Cross. Their Majesty actually lost. So how will the new intruders treat them? Swallow everything. Ghoul. Touchy sighed slightly at Yuwatch's head, pulled out and released the ghoul, and pointed the tip of the knife at Yuwatch's body. A huge phantom of the abyss instantly appeared on the Zanpakuto in the form of a sword, like a huge maw biting Yuwatch's body. When Yuwatch's body entered the mouth, it was instantly decomposed into a purified spirit child state. bit by bit absorbed by Daocheng. Feeling the complete dissipation of Yuwatch, Tojo Ayaya said, "Yo. You should really want to see the collapse of Soul Society and even the Three Realms, right? It's a pity that you can't see this. The future, but it belongs to the future that I am about to create, I can still give you a glimpse." Then Daocheng turned around and walked towards the Knights of the Star Cross, these former subordinates of Yuwatch Bok. Saw, Knights of the Star Cross, now let me give you a new meaning of survival. The Knights of the Star Cross, Stern Ritter, are a special legion composed of powerful Quincy in the Invisible Empire. Each member has a holy text and corresponding power. Almost all members wear a long white hooded cloak with a star cross on the back, and as identifying features. Under the leadership of Yuwatch, the goal is to kill all the Shinigami and kill the Spirit King. It was founded 1,000 years ago. In some cases, its overall strength can be called the strongest legion in the Three Realms. However, the internal members have different strengths and are very uneven. In the original work, Yuhabok once commented that although the Knights of the Star Cross are powerful, their only shortcoming is that they underestimate the enemy. The Quincy soldiers below were already nervous, and they began to talk in confusion. Is this a monster? He killed His Majesty. Let's run away quickly. Maybe we can save a life. Don't move at this time. It's the best choice for you. A man with a Latino face, black hair, and a single bunch of slightly curly bangs on his forehead came out and interrupted. These few Quincy soldiers are ready to make a move. Lord Yaskin. Yaskin Nakroval looked at the slowly approaching Sword City, recalled what happened just now, and whispered to himself, if my perception just now was correct, His Majesty had already planned to use that move. It's a pity that he was. Did you interrupt it? But, Toshiro Ayaya, this man abruptly interrupted the Holy Spirit, and even I felt that he had cut off His Majesty's bloodline. Tower, tower, tower. Daocheng's footsteps were particularly loud in the silent palace. Before, it could be said that Daocheng's footsteps were just the members of the Knights' confusion and doubts about the sudden invasion. Now, the footsteps directly turned into those of people who can directly judge them. Advertisement. 4 or 5 figures suddenly jumped out from the holy soldiers. They all used their flying feet to quickly approach the Sword City, and then in unison, they used the sacred destroying arrow to attack the Sword City. Toshiro watched the spirit arrows aimed at his vitals without evading, and continued to move forward regardless of sacred destruction. The moment Sacred Destroyer approached him, he was suppressed by Toshiro's spiritual pressure surrounding his body and turned into pieces one after another. Daocheng looked at these various Quincy soldiers who were attacking him desperately, and said, are they the newly promoted holy soldiers of Yuwatch? I see, they still maintain their foolish loyalty to the king at this moment. I am the one who liberated the prison of your blood. Your attack on the savior itself is an unpardonable crime. Although your ignorant loyalty is worthy of praise, I am sorry. Sword City's spiritual pressure accurately aligned with these holy soldiers who jumped out to attack, and then the spiritual pressure was activated. Under the attack of Sword City's spiritual pressure, these miscellaneous Quincy soldiers were instantly crushed into a pile of flesh and blood. Fuzzy powder. Precise control. No spillage and no mercy. The members of the Knights at the bottom of the stairs looked at Sword City walking towards them step by step, feeling extremely uneasy in their hearts, but it was impossible for them to leave even if they wanted to. Just now, they all felt locked by Sword City's spiritual pressure, although they could not sense it. Sword City's spiritual pressure, but this invisible oppression is even more frightening. Daocheng approached the Knights of the Star Cross because Daocheng just killed their former king forcefully. Hello, members of the Star Cross Knights. Daocheng walked up to the high platform that originally belonged to Yuwatch Bok, and said, I am sorry that your king has left. But your mission is still the same. Go on, the meaning of your existence remains. If the power called Quincy is properly utilized, what kind of answer will it give to the world? Toshiro stretched out his hand to the Quincy at the bottom of the steps and said, join my command. I will give you a new world that is more perfect than the original one. Ha, 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 with Shinigami's frail sword, do you want us to surrender? My honor won't allow it. Shinigami will lead us. I am His Majesty's highest masterpiece and the man closest to God. Shinigami intends to make the messenger of God surrender. This in itself is the greatest evil. When Daocheng first proposed to recruit the Knights of the Star Cross, 2 members rejected Daocheng's proposal face to face. Daocheng looked at these 2 people. One of them was wearing a mask with wings-like decorations, a man with medium-length blonde hair, a red cape and black trousers, and armor on the front of his limbs. The other person is a black man with short white hair, and his long closed left eye is covered with a black crosshair mark. Daocheng looked at the obvious features of the 2 of them and thought to himself, Gerald Valkyrie and Liji Barrow, are these 2 people? Refusing to surrender to me is in line with their characters. Although they are 2 a good combat power, but it's still a pity. Gerald Valkyrie was originally the heart of the Soul King. The holy character is M, and the symbolic ability is Miracle. One of the 4 members of the Yuwatch Guards. Lich Barrow is the captain of Yuwatch's personal guard. He is the Quincy who first bestowed upon Yuwatch the power of the holy text, which is X-axis. At this time, Gerald Valkyrie tore off his white coat, holding the shield in his left hand and the sword in his right hand, rushed towards Tojo Ayaya, and shouted, with Shinigami's fragile sword, how could he be my rival? Ritsu Barrow also took out a big sniper from under his coat, pointed it at Tojo Ayaya and said, this is Genjutsu. It is simply impossible to defeat His Majesty with Shinigami's Zanpakuto. After all, the loser will always be in this way, rejoice in the illusion achieved. Daocheng looked at the 2 people seeking death coldly and said, do you refuse? Are you still trying to attack me? That's fine. We can solve it together and clean the palace by the way. Otherwise, sit here and there your face will also feel dirty. Chapter 90 Suppress Everything. The new leader of the Invisible Empire. Yaskin Nakroval looked at Gerald's look of getting ready to go, scratched his head and said, "Spare me, it's hard to survive until now, I don't want to start another dispute and lose it in such a confused way. Said of life. Those who are greedy for life and afraid of death, and whoever violates my honor, will be killed by my sword." Gerald ignored Yaskin's complaints and hammered the ground with his shield. The spiritual pressure exploded and a large pit suddenly appeared on the palace floor. Then he jumped and rushed towards the City of Swords. At the moment when he approached Tojo Ayaya, Gerald swung his right hand, and the Sword of Hope turned in a circle, slashing 360 degrees toward Tojo with a circular sword-pressing slash. Daocheng looked at Gerald's attack and said disdainfully, "It's too slow." Gerald's 360-degree slash of the Sword of Hope cut off all the circular pillars around the Ice Palace. He looked at Daocheng who was lowering his body and mocked, "Thank you for being able to avoid it." Daocheng sneered and said, "After all, I don't want your body to touch me." That's it. Gerald stopped, turned around and swung his sword towards Tojo Ayaya's head, then, the second blow is about to come. Brush. Just when Gerald swung his sword at Toshiro Ayaya again, Toshiro swung a fatal sword mark and instantly cut him off in the chest. Toshiro Ayaya said coldly, "Next, it's my turn. Don't even think about wielding your second sword in front of the king for someone like you." Miracle. Reverse various negative nature events that occur centered on the self into various positive nature events. The ability will only be triggered based on the premise of one's own negative nature status such as being injured, trapped, or dead. And the Cross of Annihilation is the core of Gerald. If this Cross of Annihilation is destroyed, Gerard can be killed. Sword City possesses the absolute power of the Soul King's Eye. The Zanpakuto is inherently capable of absolute restraint against all kinds of weird abilities. Even if it does not destroy Gerald's Cross of Annihilation core, Sword City can easily kill him. Other side. Seeing that Tojo doesn't need Shikai or other abilities, he can easily kill Gerald in the guards with his extreme skills. Yaskin said in shock. Hey, what's going on? No way. At this time, a column of blood spurted out from Gerald's body, and he fell to the ground weakly, announcing his official death. Tachi held the Zanpakuto, and the Zanpakuto's blade reflected on his face, showing a particularly chill expression, and said, "There's nothing surprising. If you can't kill these things with one hit, it's not in line with the king's will." So elegant. Weird spell. Liji Barrow still didn't believe the huge gap between the two sides. Member of the Knights of the Star Cross, what do you mean? This is a trick, you can tell it at a glance. Neither a Shikai nor a Bankai, how can it be possible to kill Gerald with just a Zanpakuto in the form of a shallow strike? Li Jaba Luo finished speaking, he shot at Daocheng's heart instantly. Tong, a burst of blue light was aroused in front of Toshiro Ayaya, and Toshiro said, "Isn't it penetrated by all things? Instead, it shot spirit bullets at me. It seems that I am really underestimated." Got it. Rijibaro shot the spirit bullets at Tojo Ayaya. When he came into contact with the spiritual pressure that had been wrapped around Tojo Ayaya, he was absolutely suppressed by Tojo's spiritual pressure, and all of them turned into spirit particles and shattered. Advertisement. Liji Barrow said, "What did you do?" Toshiro still maintained his original actions and said, "I didn't do anything. I just kept my posture surrounded by spiritual pressure all over my body. Then, the bullet you shot at me was shattered by my pure spiritual pressure, that's all." What? Liji Barrow suddenly realized something was wrong at this moment, and when he was about to continue shooting at the sword castle, the green gun in his hand was suddenly cut off by the sword castle, and then his chest was chopped into pieces by a Zanpakuto. Suddenly lost consciousness. Didn't I say that? Don't even think about attacking me a second time with this kind of stuff. Liji Barrow's body spurted out a column of blood that was almost the same as Gerard's, and he collapsed. Hey, it's impossible, right? What kind of strength is this? Yaskin saw Toshiro Ayaya kill two members of the Star-Crossed Knights with two clean swords. Moreover, the strength of these two members was absolutely recognized by Yuwatch, and they both entered Yuwatch's personal guard. A person like this was actually dealt with by Tojo Ayaya like a soldier from the Qing dynasty. How terrifying is the strength of this man in front of me? It doesn't matter, every one of the Star-Crossed Knights. Daocheng sheathed his sword and tidied his clothes. At this moment, he was still wearing a Zai Palace-style white dress, spotless. Daocheng showed a kind smile to the Star-Crossed Knights again and said, "I'm sorry, it's just a slight interruption. Now let's start the topic again. Whether you want to join me or not, I will give you a new world that is more perfect than that of Yuwatch." While Toshiro was asking questions, Toshiro's spiritual pressure overflowed, and an invisible and powerful pressure enveloped the Quincy present at the same time. The invisible spiritual pressure suppressed formed a force of great gravity, and a strong locked everyone down. Under the coercion of Daocheng, some Quincy could no longer persist. They abandoned their feelings for the previous king and knelt down in front of Daocheng. After all, most people fight so as not to face death. The premise of fighting is to survive, so giving up life for loyalty is impossible for most Quincy. Of course, they can surrender to survival in order to survive. Knife City. More and more Quincy knelt on the ground, expressing their surrender to Sword City. Even Panita Pakaja, the left hand of the Soul King, also expressed his surrender. Yaskin, known as Little Aizen, touched his head and said, "Does this guy even choose to kneel down?" It's really. After saying that, Yasukin also bowed his head and knelt down on one knee to express his gratitude. Surrender to Tojo Ayaya. Looking at the Quincy's of the Invisible Empire kneeling in front of him, Tojoki Ayaya smiled. He was determined to obtain a series of technologies and methods of the Invisible Empire, and he also had the ability to appear in an instant and replace Seraiti. It is simply tailor-made to contribute to Soul Society. Looking at the white-clothed Quincy kneeling one by one, there was still only one person who chose to stand and look at Daocheng. This is a tall and thin young Quincy, with long golden hair and blue eyes, delicate features but cold eyes, wearing a snow-white Quincy suit and a white cloak with a 5-pointed star printed on it. He looked into Daocheng's eyes and asked seriously, "What kind of future do you want to lead our long-cherished wish of thousands of years to?" Chapter 91 The Future of the Quincy. Urahara Kazuki's Worries. Daocheng looked sideways and said, "Is it Hasward?" Yuglin Hasward was a little surprised to hear Daocheng say his name, and said, "You know me." Daocheng slowly walked down and said, "How are you sure that I can't know everything?" "Hasward, I know everything about you, your past and your original future." "My original future?" Daocheng said. "Yes, your original future. A failed empire, a wandering Quincy, a world full of corpses. This is the original future of this world. Don't you want to know?" As Yuacha's personal bodyguard, Hasward is very powerful. In the original work, whether he is facing Bankai's Yamamoto Genryusai Shigekuni, or facing Kyoraku Shunsui alone, or facing the captain of the Zero Division. In order for the Invisible Empire to win, Hasward never showed the slightest fear. In addition to possessing strength that cannot be underestimated, Hasward also possesses exceptionally good insight and analytical skills. However, his character has always remained gentle, not domineering at all, and he will be forgiving when facing weak enemies. As the highest-ranking member of the Knights of the Star Cross, he is respected and supported by most members of the Knights of the Star Cross. He obeys Yuacha's words and is always ready to protect Yuach. Hasward was also highly valued by Yuach, and was given the Mask of the Ruler during Yuacha's sleep. He was Yuacha's most trusted and closest Quincy. However, this Quincy, who was most valued by Yuach, returned the omniscience and omnipotence almighty to Yuach in the Dark Night, at the most critical moment of foreknowledge by Yuach, causing Yuach to misjudge the future, and finally caused Yuach was brutally beheaded by Ichigo's watermelon sword. When Hasward was a child, his uncle died due to Yuach's actions. He was a very contradictory individual, and he seemed to be more loyal to the Quincy as a whole. The reason why the future is the future for some people is because it cannot be seen clearly and can only make people guess. Can this unreal sense of distance really bring people happiness? Daocheng persuaded. The power called the future, isn't it the thing that brings real hope to people? Follow me, and the so-called future that is not impatient will eventually become transparent, and the so-called 3 worlds will eventually become clear, and your world will eventually be protected. Under the Tojo Ayaya Yoruichi series Pua, Hasward finally knelt down on one knee and said, "Yes." Hasward surrendered to Ayaya Tojo at this moment. Not only did Tojo escape, he even sensed an aura similar to Yuacha's from a knife on Tojo's waist. In other words, Tojo just used one of his Zanpakutos to absorb Yuacha's spirit body. Although it cannot be completely digested, under forced operation, he can even use Yuacha's power directly through the sword mode. If only this man would use holy words. After Toshiro Ayaya saw Hasward surrender, the corner of her mouth raised an intriguing arc. "Hasward, you made a right move. All Quincy will realize their new destiny under my leadership. Long cherished wish. This time our goal is not just as simple as the Seraiti, but the Soul King's palace above it. ... Advertisement. Current world, Karakura town. In a store that specializes in selling all kinds of weird things, there is a man with short, light yellow hair and a little stubble on his chin. He was wearing a dark green jacket, light green clothes and trousers, a green and white fisherman's hat and wooden clogs, and was concentrating on reading a piece of information. Beside him, there was also a black cat looking at this information with him. As the reading progressed, the expression of this man and beast gradually became solemn. At this time, the black cat suddenly spoke. "Urahara, is this true? Is the current situation in Soul Society really that bad?" The yellow-haired man wearing a fisherman's hat heard the black cat speaking, closed the intelligence document in his hand, and said, "Ah, it should be true, but don't underestimate my intelligence network. My intelligence in Soul Society is not something will go wrong." This strange man wearing a fisherman's hat is Urahara Kazuki, who is said to be the most intelligent person in Shinigami. His intelligence was rated by Aizen as surpassing his own. He is the captain of the 12th division of the original Gotei 13 and the number 1 in the Technology Development Bureau. Serve as director. 110 years ago, Urahara Kazuki was expelled from Soul Society and came to the present world in order to save Hiroko Shinji and his party who were plotted by Aizen Sosuke. But in this world, we have been paying close attention to the trends of all parties. The black cat is Yoruichi, the former captain of the 2nd division of the Gotei 13, the former commander-in-chief of Covert Mobile, and the commander of the 1st unit of the Criminal Army General Corps. He is also one of the 4 nobles in Soul Society, Yoruichi. The 20th second generation of the family is headed. He specializes in white hits and shunpo, and is a childhood friend with Urahara Kazuki. He usually likes to show off his appearance as a black cat. They have been lurking since they came to the world, actively preparing for the threat from Aizen, but they did not expect that when Aizen took action, Soul Society would also face such a big change. Urahara Kazuki was thinking and pondered, didn't Aizen and the others hold back after all? After the sudden war in Hueco Mundo, the 3 captains of the Gotei 13 team collectively defected, and at the same time the captain was defeated and died. Now the 3 realms will soon begin again. Something big is going on. I'm afraid that Tojo Ayaya's goal is not just that simple, it might even be. At this time, Yoruichi followed Urahara's words, it's more than that. Urahara, do you mean? Urahara Kazuki said. Yes, Sword City's next target is very likely to be the Soul King. Team Zero must have had a premonition and has already left the game early, and it is said that they are looking for Shiba Ishin's son by name. Shifengyuan Yoruichi said strangely. Shiba Ishin's son. Shiba Ishin's son. Yoruichi-san, I should have told you about it, right? There is something unusual about that child. He has the most perfect fusion of the 4 bloodlines of the 3 realms. That is to say, this child has been booked in advance by the Zero Division to be the first candidate for the Soul King. Urahara Kazuki stood up and said, I haven't disturbed the Kurosaki family for a long time since they got married. Now I have to go again. Shifengyuan Yoruichi murmured. Tojo Ayaya, this name seems a bit familiar. I seem to have heard this name before. Urahara Kazuki said. Toshiro Ayaya is the vice captain of the 11th Division who defected from Hueco Mundo 300 years ago. Yoruichi-san, as the head of the 20th second generation of the Shihoin family, you should know this name, right? The man who rebelled against the 46 chambers, massacred Rukongai, and was later strictly silenced by the 4 nobles, and gradually became a legend. Chapter 92 Karakura Town. The daily life of the Kurosaki family. Karakura Town at dusk. The setting sun cast a long golden shadow over the town, and everything in the city was wrapped in the golden afterglow of the setting sun. But on this street at dusk, several street gangsters surrounded a young man wearing a high school uniform. He is a little slender, has orange hair like a bad boy, and has brown eyes. Wearing a high school uniform and carrying a school bag casually, he stood opposite and looked at these street gangsters. He suddenly came out of nowhere and trampled Ah Shan down and told us to get lost. A black-haired man among the gangsters was unhappy, and then he rushed up and punched the orange-haired boy in the face, saying, Don't you say something. You. Before the gangster finished speaking, the orange-haired boy aimed at his face and kicked him again. The gangster suffered such a heavy blow to his face that he fell to the ground. Seeing the B********* D being kicked down, the orange-haired boy said nothing and continued to step on his back several times. Ain Yen, were you defeated by this kid too? How unreasonable is this? The orange-haired boy stomped on the gangster's head a few more times, and said angrily, You guys are so annoying. Take a good look at that. The young man pointed to a fallen vase behind him and said, What on earth is this? You answer the one in the middle. The man in the middle wore a white turban and a short beard. He replied with some fear, Isn't this the tribute of the child who died here before? Correct. The boy rushed over and hit the turbaned man in the chin with a big kick. So, question 2. Why did the vase fall over? The curly-haired man said. That's because we fell down while skateboarding, that. Go away. At this time, the orange-haired boy couldn't listen anymore. He directly punched each of the remaining 2 men, threw them away, and said angrily, If you dare to do it a second time, I will ask others to give you flowers. I'm sorry. Under the boy's intimidation, these skateboarding street gangsters were all scared away by him. The orange-haired boy stood under the sunset and said to himself, If you are so scared, you probably won't come here again, right? He turned his head to look at the vase and said, I will bring new flowers tomorrow. As the boy spoke, a little girl with a transparent lower body appeared on the vase in the form of a ghost. She said gratefully, Thank you for helping me get rid of them, so that I can live a quiet life, brother. You're welcome. The orange-haired boy stepped forward to help hold the vase in place, then turned around and walked away, saying, Hurry up and become a Buddha. Just as the orange-haired boy waved away to the little girl under the setting sun, a man with medium long brown slightly curly hair tied into a ponytail slowly appeared in the air of Karakura Town. He wore 2 fancy hairpins. Wearing a pink feather-woven coat with embroidered patterns, he often wears a hat on his head and a slight beard on his chin. Ever since the orange-haired boy suddenly beat up a street gangster, Kyoraku Shunsui had been standing in the air not far away, observing everything about this boy with his aura hidden. Kurosaki Ichigo, is this the boy Team Zero is looking for? Jingaku Shunsui lowered his hat and said, Except for being able to see the spirit body, there is nothing particularly unusual about it, but since he is the son of Captain Shiba, it should be easy to do this. Advertisement. My name is Kurosaki Ichigo, 15 years old, first year of high school. My family runs a hospital in the town, and I see people being saved, but others are still helpless. I don't know if this is the reason. In short, since I became sensible, seeing ghosts seems to be a matter of course. Kurosaki Ichigo complained as he walked into the door of his house and said hello, I'm back. Too slow. At this time, a tall and strong middle-aged man with short black hair rushed over and kicked Kurosaki Ichigo, knocking him to the ground. Kurosaki Ishin yelled and reprimanded, You unfilial son. Isn't our dinner scheduled to start at 7 o'clock? Kurosaki Ichigo also responded directly to his father with a series of messages. Is this how you greet your son who has come back after fighting to the death? It's so noisy. Kurosaki Ishin replied to his son, no matter what the reason is, if you don't follow my master's rules, you will only be punished. Kurosaki and his son were shaking fists at each other at this moment, fighting together as usual. Kurosaki Ishin scolded. Are you still self-righteous? Do you think you are the only one who can touch and talk to ghosts? Ichigo was not to be outdone. It's so annoying and I don't want this. Kurosaki, who had short brown hair, looked at the quarrel between the two and said dissatisfiedly, really, you two should stop quickly, dinner is going to be cold. Kurosaki, who had black hair and a somewhat masculine look, said nonchalantly, don't worry about them. Come on, I'll give you another bowl of rice. But Sha Li, Kurosaki Ishin screamed and punched Ichigo, but Ichigo shouted and stepped on his face, sending him flying. Kurosaki Ishin was kicked several times and rolled to the wall. Kurosaki Ichigo said, besides, having a healthy high school student come back at 7 o'clock every day is. When Kurosaki Ichigo was talking, a small green dot slowly appeared next to his shoulder. After seeing it, Kurosaki Sha Li reminded, Brother Ichigo, someone new is already following you. Quote. Kurosaki Ichigo looked at the male spirit with glasses who appeared next to him, and said in shock, when did this guy? He drove away one after another, it's really abominable. After that, Kurosaki Ichigo punched the male spirit with glasses. I'm full. Kurosaki turned to look at her brother who was still struggling with the man with glasses and said, it's so hard. Who made the eldest brother A level? But Kurosaki Yuzi said with a little envy, this is really good. I can hardly see anything except a vague feeling. Kurosaki Sha Li looked at the floor with her eyes crooked and said, but, I don't believe in ghosts. Yuzi said, but Sha Li can also see it, right? The only one who can't see it is Dad. Kurosaki turned around and said seriously, whether you can see it or not, as long as you don't believe it, it means you don't have it. Yuzi. Hi, excuse me. Because Kurosaki Ichigo didn't close the door when he entered, another man with a ponytail and a stubble walked in from the outside. His clothes were no different from ordinary people on the street. He said, excuse me, invisible, what's going on? Kurosaki Ishin was entangled with his son at this time, but when he saw the sudden appearance of the ponytailed man with stubble, he was stunned. Jinraku, why are you here? Chapter 93 Kurosaki Ichigo, why do you come to see me today? Kurosaki Ishin suddenly saw his colleague from Soul Society 20 years ago suddenly appearing in his home. He completely forgot about the fight with his son now and said in shock, Kingraku. Captain, why are you here? Hiroku Shunsui smiled slightly at Kurosaki Ishin and said, have you forgotten the appearance of your old friend after almost 20 years? Long time no see, Captain Shiba. I see that you seem to be having a lot of fun with your family. This is really enviable, Captain Shiba. Hiroku Shunsui's expression changed and he asked, with the current situation in Soul Society, do you still understand? Kurosaki Ishin sighed and said, my last name is Kurosaki now, and, what happened in Soul Society? Hiroku Shunsui said, 2 captains died, 3 captains defected, Seraiti can be said to have been completely captured by Hueco Mundo's legions, and the entire Soul Society is still in a dilapidated state. Kurosaki Ishin. What the hell happened? Captain Kyoband. Tojo Ayaya. Hiroku Shunsui paused for a moment and said, the deputy captain of the 11th division who defected from Soul Society 300 years ago is not at the same time as you. However, I believe that you are serving as the 10th division. The captain of the team must have heard about it, right? Kurosaki Ishin put away his playful smile before, holding his chin and thinking, Sword City. I did hear this rumor from 300 years ago when I was the captain. Hey, what are you talking about? What old friends of 20 years? What characters from 300 years ago? What on earth is Soul Society? Kurosaki Ichigo couldn't understand his father and this self. A conversation between the weird uncles at home. Kurosaki Ichigo asked loudly to his father, Dad, what are you hiding from me? Ichigo. At this time, Kurosaki Ishin looked at Kurosaki Ichigo and slowly lowered his head. Seeing this, Jinraku Shunsui asked strangely, you haven't told him everything yet. Including the truth about the world and your true identity. Kurosaki Ishin said helplessly, now is not the time. As long as he is sufficiently prepared, I will naturally tell him his origin and everything about him. However, now Ichigo is obviously not ready. I have the mentality to accept it, so. Kurosaki Ichigo's eyes trembled and he said, Dad, what are you and this uncle talking about? What is my origin and everything about me? What are you talking about? Why can't I understand it at all? Hiroku Shunsui looked at Kurosaki Ichigo's youthful expression and sighed. It is true that he is not ready now, but the Zero Squadron officially came down this time and specifically said that they would come to find your son. And Kurosaki Ichigo the origin of, what on earth is going on? Time is running out, there is no time for him to prepare slowly. Hiroku Shunsui came over and said, now is the time to explain everything. Why is Team Zero looking for your son? What is so special about him? Kurosaki Ishin hesitated, looking at the shock and curiosity on his son's face, and said, this advertisement. It seems that Mr. Kurosaki Ishin is a little uncomfortable, so let me, the third party, explain it first. The truth about the past 20 years. There was a voice outside the door, followed by a man in green clothes and light gold. The man with long hair slowly opened the door of Kurosaki's house on crutches. After Ichigo saw Urahara Kazuki's outfit, he blurted out a title, Clog Hat. When Kyoraku Shunsui saw the person coming, he said in surprise, Urahara Kazuki. You were claimed by Central 46,110 years ago to be the planner of the Shinigami virtualization experiment. Why are you here? Urahara Kazuki said. After so much in Soul Society, Captain Kyoban still thinks that I am the leader of the 110-year virtualization experiment, right? And I believe Captain Kyoban has made a judgment about the real culprit now. Is it Aizen Sosuke? Yes. Urahara Kazuki continued to explain. Moreover, Aizen Sosuke is also related to the power and origin of Kurosaki Ichigo. It can be said that he is an important member who directly builds Kurosaki Ichigo's soul. Kurosaki Ichigo heard Urahara Kazuki talking about him again and said, What are you talking about? The structure of the soul. That is. Ichigo-san, I know you have a lot of questions. But now please listen to me slowly. Regarding part of the power in your body, especially the part about hollow, the judgment is made by Toshiro and Aizen. Quote. Urahara Kazuki continued. Since you don't understand the outside of the world, let me explain it to you. Since you can see the spirit clearly, you should have more or less guesses about the inside. In this world, there are front, has, reverse. Since ancient times, there has been something related to the alien existence that swallows everything and is called hollow. However, there are also some people who deal with hollow in unknown places. Maintaining the balance of the three realms. Urahara Kazuki made some simple science popularization about the setting of the three realms to Kurosaki Ichigo, and it was the first time for Kurosaki Ichigo to hear the concepts of Shinigami and hollow. Kurosaki Ichigo asked. So Kyoraku-san and Urahara-san are also Shinigami. Kyoraku Shunsui smiled and said, Didn't you hear the conversation I had with your father before? Not only us, but your father is also a Shinigami, and he is also the captain of the Gotei 13. Dad is also such a powerful Shinigami. Kurosaki Ichigo was shocked. His father, who usually looked sloppy and terrible, was actually a very powerful person. Kurosaki Isshin suddenly recalled what his sister had said before. Kurosaki Isshin could not see spirits like himself, and asked strangely, So, since Dad is Shinigami, why can't even those ordinary spirits be seen? Kyoraku Shunsui was also surprised by this and said, Captain Shiba, no, Mr. Kurosaki Isshin. Why did you lose your spiritual pressure and no longer be able to see the existence of the spirit body? When I came to see you, I prepared a special. The deputy just came to visit. Kurosaki Isshin's tone became serious at this moment, and he said solemnly, Urahara, let me tell the rest of the story. Kurosaki Isshin looked at Ichigo and said earnestly, Originally, I planned to let your instincts be tempered and your mentality matured in a few years before I said it, but now that time is tight, I have no choice but to say it. This is the most urgent time. Listen carefully, you are not a human being, but you are not a pure Shinigami or a hollow either. Ichigo, everything starts from a rainy night in Naruki City 20 years ago.